पे भी हम लाइव हैं। क्या क्या? अच्छा वेट सॉरी। So today the schedule of the workshop will go from we'll first introduce you to front-end web development taken by Yashwardhan, and then Darshan will introduce you to back-end web development using Node.js, and after that we will basically be integrating both of the services, and at the very end I will be showing you how we have actually deployed it on our infrastructure. So this will be the schedule of the event. So yeah. अपने दोस्तों को ला लो जो भी बच्चे हैं, तो फिर हम शुरू करते हैं थोड़ी देर में, बस अभी 5 एग्जैक्ट। Hey guys, so I'm Rafa Sharma, the co-lead of GDSC, and today I'm going to introduce you to Yashwardhan, who is our web development mentor, and Darshan Patel, who is our core member at GDSC. So I welcome you all to the web development workshop, and I hope you have a great time learning. So Yash, I would hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Am I audible to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi everybody. I am Yashwardhan, as Raghav told you, and I am the web development mentor at GDSC, Thapar. And personally, I have been doing web development, especially front-end development, since I was in my first year. So I have attended a lot of hackathons, and I have made a lot of projects with my friends. So I know a couple of things about front end. So we'll talk about it today. So first of all, tell me how many of you already know HTML, CSS, and Vanilla JS, and the basic technologies. Are you familiar with that, or are you a complete beginner? You could tell in the chat, or you could raise your hand. Raise your hand if you know HTML, CSS, and Vanilla JS to some extent. Okay, so we have a decent number of people. So for those two who are a complete beginner, let's start from the beginning itself. So what is front end? Like you saw in the first slide talking front end. So what is front end? And if there is a front end, is there a back end too? So yes, these are terminologies related to web development. And these are the domains of web development. Front end deals with what you see on your screen as a user, and backend deals with the computation and the programming that is happening behind the curtain, behind your screen on the servers. So for example, you log on to amazon.com, and then you browse through the products. So the interface you are dealing with, the screen, the website, that is front end, that is the client side. And the servers that are running for Amazon, that store all the information about all the products and give you the app information when required. That is the backend. So these are the terms if you're not familiar with them already. And here is a basic schematic on how front end and backend communicate with each other. So front end can include website or an app or a web app, anything, and a desktop app too. And then there is backend that is running on a server and is doing all the computation, and it is also linked with the database. So the data is stored in the database. The database is kind of a storehouse. It doesn't perform any computation on its own. It only stores data. So the backend uses the database and performs some computation on the data and then provides to the client side or the front end. So that is how any web technology is working. So this was front end and back end. So now let's jump onto the main topic of today's front end part, React. So most of you would have heard about React, and this workshop is mainly going to be about React as far as the front end part is concerned. So we have done HTML, CSS, and Vanilla JS, and we know how to make basic websites. We have made some pages, and we know we start by writing the head tag and then define some links in it, and then we begin the body tag, and then begin with the headings and tables and every kind of element that is present and we want to use. So what is React, and how it is different, and do we really need to learn it? So React, first of all, is a front-end library, and I have highlighted the word library here because there is library and there is a framework. These two things are different. So React is a front-end library which was developed and is maintained by Facebook, which is now Meta. And you can also find the code that is written for React on GitHub. If you go on to Facebook/React on GitHub, so you could find the code actually that is running behind React. So React is a front-end library. And now the question comes, what is a library and what is a framework, and what makes them different? You know, so let's talk about that for a while. Library, is kind of a helper package. It provides you some additional functions, some functionality, some special kinds of objects that you work with, and gives you something to start with. You don't have to write everything from scratch. Whereas a framework is an all-in-one package. So suppose you want to build a large scale app, just like a very big e-commerce website or anything like that, which would be having a lot of footfall. So you build things on frameworks because it is bootstrapped with nearly every single thing that you need to make a large scale app. So for example, you need to perform some testing, and you need to make sure that it is working fine from the point of view of networks. And there are a lot of things when you scale your app. So then the work of framework is introduced, whereas a library is not as vast as a framework, but it provides you with some basic facilities. And a library depends on other third party libraries to make things work. For example, React is a library. Okay, so you need to make a website using React. Now you need to make multiple pages inside it, and you need to redirect a user from one page to another. This is called routing, for example. So you need to install React Router, which is another library, to implement this feature. And for testing also, and for every other thing, there are other libraries which are openly available and you can integrate it easily. Whereas in framework, everything is almost bundled up together initially only. So you don't need to worry about it. So that is the key difference. And if we consider the examples, you must have heard about Angular and Vue if you have heard about React. These are the alternatives. If you want to jump to newer technologies after HTML, CSS, you could either do Angular, Vue, or you could do React. But these are alternatives of each other. But React is a library, while Angular and Vue are frameworks. They are a complete package. So that is a difference, and you need to keep that in mind before beginning with any library or framework. And it is not like if you start with Angular or Vue, you won't be able to shift to React or vice versa. It is completely up to you from where you want to start. But it is generally preferred to start with React because it is kind of more beginner friendly. You can catch up things very easily in it because it is very similar to normal JavaScript, and you will find it very easy that okay, you are grasping React, and it is not that big of a thing कि हमें पता ही नहीं है कि हम कर ही नहीं सकते. So that is why React is preferred generally, and also because of the support it has a big community. So that is also a reason. Then we come to what does React do? Okay, we know it is a library. Okay, but what is a library? What does it do? So React is used for building user interfaces, okay, based on components. So what is a user interface? Everything that we deal with and interact with as a user through our mobile screens or through our laptop screens or desktop screens, it is user interface. Okay, so for example, if I show you a website, like this is my portfolio website. So you see, this is a screen. Okay, this is some information written on it. Then these are various boxes which represent the projects I've done. These are various cards which represent my social media handles. This is my contact information. So these are some bits, and these are the building blocks, kind of, we can say, that build my website, okay, that define the skeleton of it. So these individual units are the components of this user interface. This complete site as a whole is a user interface, and these boxes and these headings and these subheadings and everything in it, which you can which you can see and distinguish, it is a component. So these are UI components, and they combine and come together to make a user interface. So React helps us in making user interfaces with the help of such components, and we can create such components on our own. It is completely flexible. So that is the benefit. But still, one question has not been answered. What is the difference? Like you can also build the same website with HTML, CSS, and vanilla JS. There is no big deal. You can create divs and you can enter information, everything, right? What is the need of implementing it through React and not HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So let's come straight to the point. The benefits of React over HTML and vanilla JS and CSS, which comes together. So the first and the very big advantage of React over plain technologies is that it only re-renders what's updated on the screen. So do you get what it says here? Like it only re-renders what's there on the screen. What do you mean by that? Let's take an example. We go to Amazon. Okay, we are ordering a book, and we see that there is a lot of information here, and many of the information is not linked to each other. Like some information is independent to each other. So like if I click here and choose a different version, whatever it is, so that is irrelevant to this. So what it is meant by re-rendering what is changed is that the part of the interface that you see, only that thing would change, that needs to be changed, and not the whole page would be re-rendered. For example, if there was an option that we could select the number of items we want, and the price would show for the total purchase. So if we change here the amount of product we want, and the amount here changes, so in React it won't require the entire page to refresh and entire page to reload and fetch from the server. It puts up load on the server whenever you reload a website or whenever you fetch information from the backend. So it is very convenient and very efficient that only those things update when which are actually changing. So changing the quantity won't affect here anything here or anything down there. It only affects the price, the total price, and the discount, for example. So that is the benefit of React. If we change something and it causes some other change on the screen, that only that part would be updated. And suppose we add it to the cart, then the one written here should be updated, right? But it should not change your sign-in details and your address and this logo and this on the screen and anything else. So when we add it to the cart and only this updates, then it is React. Okay, it is client-side rendering, so which is implemented by React. So this is the main benefit of React, and this won't be achieved easily by plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So because it uses a virtual DOM instead of a real DOM, so it only picks up that element which is affected on the screen, and then it changes it. So this was a benefit. Now before discussing some other benefits of React, I would like you to get started with React, because I believe if you will practice it and get hands-on experience, then you will able to grab things easier and faster. So let us jump into how we start coding in React. So first of all, React is not a language. It is it supports HTML, JavaScript, and a special kind of language, JSX, which we would be talking about. But then we need to get started with React. So there are some things we need to do. Okay, so there are 3 ways to start while working with a React project. So if you are learning React, or creating a very basic app, which does not hold many big functionalities, and the performance doesn't matter that much, because it doesn't render that complex stuff on the screens that you need to perform big computations, and the time is very important. So that is not the case here. We would be starting with a very basic app for this workshop, and also to begin with. So we can use create React app, which is a tool chain. So it is kind of a template that you get when you run a command. It is a simple command, and when you run that, you get a predefined folder structure, okay, and some files, and you need to make changes in some certain directories only that would reflect on the screen, and that would create your website. So you don't need to worry about how React is actually building the website, because ultimately React is also breaking down everything into JavaScript and HTML only, into plain JavaScript and plain HTML. It breaks down the code into bundles, and that is delivered to the server, which shows the website. So it is not like when you inspect a React based website, you will see something different. You will see the HTML only, the very code that you could write in the plain HTML and JS, that would also render the same website. So the compilation that happens behind the curtain, that is all provided to you beforehand, and you just need to write the code in JavaScript, HTML, and JSX, so that the changes and the UI you want is seen on the screen. So that is a tool chain. It is a kind of a template. So create React app is the very basic and the first choice of the template or tool chain, whatever we say it. And then if you want to build a server side server rendered websites, like SSR, it is called server side rendering. So it is something of a whole topic in itself. So we can discuss it later. If you guys want, we take a workshop on it too. Then let us know, and we'll take a workshop on server side rendering too. And for that purposes, we use Next.js template. Okay, and there is something else which is static sites. So Gatsby is a toolchain which is used for that. So for the purpose of this workshop, we'll be using create React app. So what is the simple command? First of all, the prerequisites are a node should be installed in your PC, and npm must be installed. So npm is node package manager. Darshan would be telling more about it when he takes over. So it is used for installing packages which are available in the npm reservoir, and it is also used to execute tools. So these are the prerequisites, and once you have these on your PC, then you can create your first React app. So let us jump to coding. The first command says npx create React app space my app. The npx here is not a typo, I mind you. It is for execution of a command. So we execute the create React app command through the npx. Okay, so let us jump to it. So let us open the terminal. Let us create a directory, or let us create an app on the desktop itself. So the command was npx create React app, and the name of your app, the name of the folder you want to give, and the name you want to call it. Okay, so suppose there it was written my app, but I choose something different. So my first React app. So now it would create the React app in my root directory, because I was in my root directory, not desktop, sorry. So it would create a React app in my root directory. Though you don't want to do this, you should not create any React app in the root directory or anything. You should, maintain a separate folder for all your React apps, like I do. Or you could create a folder for your GitHub repositories, or depending on the organization you are making the React app for. So you should keep that in that directory and then create React app. Okay, so if I do ls, then you can see here is a directory, my first React app. Okay, so now I want to move into that directory. That was the second command. We move into the React app. And now let's jump to what it holds, like what are the different files in it. Okay, so you see here are some files here. First of all, the public file, the folder, the source folder, and here are some JSON files. So what are these? What is the purpose of this? So first of all, from a beginner's point of view, I would tell that most of the changes we do in this src folder. Okay, the source. So we code everything here. We create multiple directories and multiple files inside this, and then we start coding. And this is this holds the main index.html file. I told you that everything would be compiled down to normal HTML and JavaScript. And if you have made a website earlier in plain HTML and JavaScript, then you know that the entry point for your website is index.html. So here is the index.html, and no need to worry about the vast amount of code written here. Most of it is comments anyways. So this is important. Okay, everything you write here would be rendered inside this div. So this is the significance of this. And then it is the title, React app. So when you load this website on this server localhost, then you would see React app written on top. So it is this, and this is the favicon for the website, and these are some other logos, and this is a general file containing metadata, and then these are some files. Okay, so most of these files are not of use when you start with a project. So we'll kind of delete them for now. Most of them are for like this report web vitals. It is kind of for getting the efficiency and everything related to that. And then there is a test file. You write unit tests, and you perform some operations on your project to ensure that everything is working fine. So these are not required as of now, because we are just beginning with a very basic project, and we would be performing testing while coding. So that is not required. So we can delete these many files. The only files we want to keep are the app.js, okay, and the index.js and the index.css. Everything else can be deleted. So first, inside this src folder, I am telling, not these. So what we can do is select manually and then delete them, or else I was personally very irritated with this problem. So what I did, I created my personal shell command for this. Okay, so if I write format CRA stands for create React app, and format means formatting it. So if I type this command, then it automatically deletes many of the unnecessary files. It only keeps app.js, index.css, index.js, and creates an additional folders too, which we would be wanting in our project later on. So this tools does the job easy for us. So you can I'll provide this the link to this Medium article and how you can create your own shell command for such purpose later. But for now, I've used this. And then let's jump on to package.json. Okay, so this is the file which contains all information regarding your app, and the dependencies, the third-party libraries I told you about. Like React is not self-reliant, so it depends on other third-party libraries too. So there are dependencies. So the dependencies are mentioned here with the version. So these are some dependencies. So that is what it holds. And now how to start a website, how to start a React app on your local host. A simple command npm start, and then it would boot up your site. So because we have nothing here, so we see nothing. But suppose I write hi there and save it, you see hi there appearing. So this is just like HTML. There is a div and you write inside it. So it is like HTML and you wrote something and it renders on the screen. So let's now further jump into what React holds and what are the benefits. So the first benefit I told you, that it re-renders only the things that are changing on the interface and not the entire website. The second thing is that the logic and skeleton comes much closer in React. What is what do you mean by the logic of a website? How it is defined? It is defined by JavaScript, and the skeleton of the website is defined by HTML. So HTML and JavaScript come closer to each other as compared to when you were writing websites in normal HTML and vanilla JS. So this special kind of hybrid, it is a language on its own, which is used in React, and it is called JSX. It is a syntax, not a language to be specific. It is a syntax. So we look at how JSX is and how it works. Okay. So what are the benefits of this? It results in much shorter code, much cleaner code, and much readable code. So it reduces the number of lines you need to write to perform some simple operations. Okay, so automatically it becomes shorter and cleaner, because if you write less, it would be cleaner. So, and it is more readable. You get it, what you are writing. And even for a beginner, it is easy to understand what is happening in the code. Okay, so let us have a look. In normal HTML and vanilla JS, if you want to render a name, hello space some name on a website, depending on the name that would be coming from somewhere else, you can't hard code it. Okay, you cannot write hello space the actual name. You need to get it from somewhere, and then you need to render it on the screen. And what you do first, in the body tag, you write the h1 heading and hello, and then a span element, and then you provide it with the ID, okay, for identification. Then in the script tag where you write your JS, you create a variable which fetches the name element from using the function get element by ID, and then you have the control of this span tag. Okay, now you define a variable that contains a string, and we suppose that here we are getting this string from somewhere, from a call or anything, and then we are storing it in this variable. And then finally, when we have to display it on the screen, we use this name variable which holds this span tag, and then insert that value into it. Okay, so this is the lines of code that we need to write. Same functionality we want to achieve in React, we do it like this. This is so simple. Like you can just insert variables inside HTML. So you would agree that this is reducing your code by so many lines. This is just a basic example. Suppose if you talk about a big scaled project where information is to be displayed according to the user. For example, Amazon. Okay, so there should be your name and email on the top, and then everything. So you can't be fetching HTML tags like this and then inserting values into them through vanilla JS. You need this. So that is why we moved to React from HTML and vanilla JS. So let us look here with an example. Okay, so let me define. We define variables through let in JavaScript. I guess you should be knowing that. So yes, React requires some basic information and knowledge about JavaScript. It does require that, but you don't need to be perfect in JavaScript. Nobody can be perfect, obviously, and it is a vast language, and you don't need to memorize things. You just need to know how things are working. So, for example, I create a variable, and then instead of writing there, I write name and save it. You see, my name is being reflected, and I have not written the name here. I have put a variable inside the curly braces. This is the syntax of JSX. When you need to provide variables inside HTML, you use curly braces. Or when you need to implement JavaScript, it is not about variables also. When you need to implement JavaScript inside HTML, you do it inside curly braces. So this is how easy JSX makes it. Okay, and another example of JSX is you can store HTML inside a JS variable. So here what we did was we inserted a JS variable inside HTML. But now in this case, we are storing whole HTML inside JS. So instead of this, if I write and then inside div, if I provide name and save it, you see hello in bold, because I enclosed it in H1. And if I would have used some other tag, then it would have reflected the same way. And here, if I inspect it, you can see there is a div inside it, which is in H1. Okay, and what we coded here, a div inside it, it is H1. So that is how JSX works. You can use JavaScript inside HTML and HTML inside JavaScript. So that is a big benefit, which makes React more user friendly too. And similarly, there are other examples. You are rendering an ordered list, and inside that you want to run the map function from JavaScript on an array. So you provide curly braces, and then you perform this JavaScript. And list is an array, as you can see, and the map function works on an array, and it iterates through each item. So item is the individual element every time passing through it, and then it is returning HTML again. So this is a beautiful example of JSX that is used mostly in most of the use cases. So before jumping onto that, one more thing I would like to tell you is that though we are writing normal HTML kind of thing here in the return thing, but you have seen attributes, right? So like there is an on-click function, but in normal HTML, it is written like on-click with C small. But because this is JSX and it is more similar to JavaScript as compared to HTML, so we follow some terminal some syntax that is more inclined towards JavaScript. For example, using camel case instead of such. So what is camel case? Since you can see here, like if there is a combined word, which could be broken down. So you start with the small alphabet, and when the first alphabet of the second word occurs, you capitalize it. So these are the various kinds of cases. This is Pascal case. This is also used frequently in React. Okay, and this is kebab case. You saw that in create React app. So, and this is the thing we use for defining attributes in JSX. So this was one thing you should take care of. So instead of this, you can use on click with capital C. So you would also see suggestions if you have installed IntelliSense in your VS Code for JS and JSX. So you'd see automatically, and that was one thing. Now moving on. Okay, so we understood what is JSX and how it is working, right? And how it is making a task easier. So the next benefit of React is it makes the things modular and reuse. It make things modular, and due to that, we achieve reusability of code. Okay, so how does it do that? Using React components. So if you remember, I told you about components. So if this is a website, these are the individual blocks, building blocks of the website, and these are repeated. You don't need to code this again and again. If the information is changing, the structure remains the same, right? The colors and the box style and the placement of the information remains the same, but only the information changes. So these build components. So we make our code modular using components. So let us jump into it. How we write a basic component. Okay. So we when we started writing a code, we saw app.js. We started writing into it directly. Okay. We returned an HTML. But this is a component. Okay. And components are of two types. One is class based components, and the others are function based components. You can use either of them. Both of them would yield similar kind of product, but these were used a lot in earlier times. But now with newer times, the function based components are being used more frequently, and the newer versions of React also have a lot of support for these components. So for the sake of this the workshop 2, we would be going ahead with function based components. So as you can see here, we have written a function named app. Okay, and it can take some parameters, and then it is the definition, and inside the definition we return some HTML. So the basic example of a function, or how you define a function based component, is that it should be a function, a JavaScript function, and it must return some HTML. Okay, and then you export that function out of that file to be used elsewhere in some other files. Like you would have coded in C++, and you include library files, right? Hashtag include IOStream, or you can create your own C++ file and then include that file in some other C++ file. So kind of similar to that, you can create functional components in different files and then export them and then import them in other files. Okay, so let us begin with creating a first component. So for organizing the code in a better way, and it is a good practice, we create a directory called components, and we create our components inside this. So I'll be following that. You can name your component anything, and it should begin with capital letter. Okay. The JSX identifies components like this. It should begin with a capital alphabet, and you can write .js at the end or JSX at the end. It doesn't make a big difference. Either of it would work. So you could write JS or JSX. I would write JS here. Okay. So how do we create a component? It is a function. So we write the keyword function, then name it. So it is a convention that whatever we have named our file, the name of the component should also be same. So it is easier to work with. So we write here my component. Okay, so this is a function. Now what we need to do, we need to return what? HTML. So let us create a simple HTML, and inside this we write my first component and save this. Okay, so it is not very usable until now unless we export it. So we'll export it, and we use the same name as we used for the function. Okay, so my component. So now you can see the green color that it is a complete file. And now we have exported this and we have created a first component. So now how to use this, how to render this. So if you see here the website, it has not reflected any change. You wrote this my first component, but where is it? How to make it visible on the screen? So we include the main skeleton of the website inside the app.js, inside the return of the app.js. So like I would be coming to a very real life example very soon on how to code a real website and how to include stuff into app.js. So for now I would tell you, first you need to import your element. Import, what was the name of our component? My component. Okay, so as you type my, you can see some suggestions, and it also gives you the relative path. So here you have imported it. Now where how do you want to render it? You want to render it beneath this. Okay, so you write this, and like normal HTML, the normal elements and tags you get in HTML, like the divs, the inputs, the h1s, the paragraph tags, the span. It is, the component is just like that. You enclose it in angular brackets. You provide some attributes in it. We would be talking about it soon, and it renders on the screen. So it is exactly like the native elements you get from HTML, but the only difference is you're customizing them completely using the native HTML elements. So here it would not render right now because you cannot have two sibling elements inside the hierarchy. Okay, so this is the very first rule of working with React apps, that you cannot have sibling elements on the topmost level. So you need to enclose them in a parent, which could only be one. So either you can enclose both of them in a div and then shift them. And this error is due to not enclosing. Okay, so you can see the error has been fixed. So either you can do this, or instead of creating an additional redundant div, you can just enclose it in angular brackets. That also works. It is called a fragment. You have not used any HTML element, you've just enclosed them. So this is how you render it. And now if I save and see, so you can see this is also being rendered and this is also being rendered. Just like normal HTML, where you would have written div h1 and below that you would have written another h1. So the hierarchy remains the same. Okay, the placement remains the same. So this is how you write your components and code your components. So let's talk about what we can do more with these components. Like normal HTML, you have seen if we write an input tag, okay, then we get an option to specify the type of the input, what type of the input it is. So these are the options, right? So you can choose any one of them. So if I say text, so you will get a normal input with text input. So this is an attribute in HTML. So similarly, you should have some control over your custom components if you are creating them, So if they serve the same purpose, then they should have the same functionality too. So yes, we have something which provides some more customization over our components, and these are called props. So before we move on to props, I would like to ask if all of you guys are, following with me and we are on the same page, and if any one of you has any doubt, so the stage is open. You can ask questions in the chat and we would address them.
Should we give them a unmute permission? Yeah, chat taken.
All right. I guess we have received some questions, or are those general doubts.
Yeah, so like one person actually had a doubt regarding the difference between Bootstrap and React. What exactly was the difference between those?
Okay, so has it been answered or shall I answer this?
I tried answering. I think an official answer will be better.
Okay. So Bootstrap is also kind of a framework, but it is a styling framework. Okay, so you can implement that in your normal HTML, plain HTML and JavaScript too, and in your React apps too. It provides, pre-built classes which you can directly put into your class attribute, and then you will see the styles applied to it. You don't have to write your own CSS. So that what Bootstrap does. But React is a UI interface building library. So you need to code the skeleton too. In Bootstrap, you are given with some skeletons, but those are, kind of pre-made. Like if you want to make a form or a card, so you can use Bootstrap card or Bootstrap form, and that would hold a basic style, and then you can customize over it. But in React, you need to write on your own, or you can write through Bootstrap. So React is a kind of a template and provides many functionalities related to a website. And Bootstrap is mostly concerned with the looks and the skeleton of the website and the designing. So that is the difference.
We
These are
got
not
another question from. So you can continue.
Yeah, so these are not very comparable. These are separate kind of technologies. But yes, I understand you would be confused. Like we get some components on Bootstrap if we log on to Bootstrap, and then we see the various elements and things we get there. And but what is the difference? So that is okay. But like we need to import some scripts for Bootstrap in a normal project, in the plain HTML project, or if we are using React, and then we use those. But here we write the skeleton on our own. It's totally upon our wish how we need to implement it. The implementation is Bootstrap, one of the implementations. So I
We got
think
another question from Aditya Agrawal from the YouTube live. His question
yeah,
is: I have been coding in PHP for quite some time. I was
okay.
interested in using PHP with React. Is that possible? If yes, please guide me. I have tried but haven't gotten much far.
I guess it is. It might be possible because PHP is a backend scripting language, and React is a front-end library. So it can be, it shall be compatible with it. But I'm not really sure because I have not worked with PHP myself, and I have seen rare projects that have PHP and React functioning together. So I don't know what is the prerequisite, or how to include PHP, because when we write PHP, mostly we write it inside the HTML files only. So there we get the control. But then here we need to make some separate PHP files and then integrate it or include it in the React project only. I'm not really sure about it. I think we can find some articles on it online, and then we can discuss on it. So I'll try to search that after the workshop, and we can post it on a social media story, or on the Notion page also in the resources section, so you can find it. And else we can also have a talk later on it. So I think that answers your question.
Cool. So let's go ahead. I think अभी इतने questions हैं.
Okay, so let's continue with it. So I know and I agree that it can be exhausting, to see a lot of React at once to begin with. But we are trying to make it as basic as possible. And at any point, if you feel that you are not on the same page, you are not on the same pace, and you feel confused about anything, then you can just raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat box, and we would answer there and then, and not continue go on continuing with the workshop. We'll first answer your queries and make sure everyone is on the same page. So okay, let's move on. Now we saw how to make components. Okay, it is a function which returns HTML. Simple. So how to gain control over things? So for example, I don't need to show first here. I don't want to show first. I want to show something that is decided here in this app component, and I need to pass it here into this component. So how do I do? So like I showed you an example of input tag, where you can define the type of input, and depending on it, it is rendered. So here for the text, you can see the alphabets. If I change it to password and save it, you won't see it, because it changes the functionality, it changes the characteristics of that input. So how do you define the characteristics of your own components? So that is possible through props. Okay, so let us jump to what are props. So as I have told you, it is just like an attribute in HTML elements, and we can define some characteristics through it. Okay, we can define control over our components. So let us take an example. Let me make another variable. Let number equal to second. Okay, I need to display second there, and that I decide in this component. So how do I pass it? I create a name for my attribute, anything you want. I have written number here, so you can also write number here too, or anything else. So suppose I change it to X. Okay, and then I say number, and what value should it take? For example, here the type took the value of password. What value should it take? I say it should take the value of X, the variable. Okay, so I did this, but still we see there is no change. We see my first component. So how do we implement the change? So now whenever we pass something here, the attributes, like we pass in the HTML elements, we get them as parameters. Okay, so one thing you should know is props is the short name for properties. So we can write props here as parameters, and then it forms kind of an object. Okay, I'll show you how. And it contains everything that we pass here in our component inside this angular bracket. It contains everything as a key value pair. So props dot number would give the value of this, props dot something else would give the value of something else, जो भी उसकी value हम store कर रहे होंगे. So that is how it works and how the property works. So once we have defined a parameter props here, so now we want to implement it. Okay, so again back to magic JSX. We create a variable, and what do we write inside it? Do we write number, or do we write what do we write? So as we passed a parameter called props, we would write props dot the name of the attribute we put here. Okay, so we put number here. It should not be confused with this. This is the value. It is independent. This is the thing we are concerned with. So number is the name of the attribute. So props dot number it is. And once we save it, see the magic. We pass second, and we got my second component here. If we pass something else, something, for example, we'll see this. So this is how information is being passed down to the component through props, properties. Okay, so you know how this thing is working. Like for example, if we want to pass more properties inside our component, so this is a number. Okay, so if I write a equals to 1 and b equals to 3, then how to access that inside this? Simple. We create Angular braces for implementing variables inside HTML. Props is the parameter we have passed here. So we'll write props dot the name of the attribute A, for example. Then props dot B for the other attribute. And we see here 1 and 3, A and B, which are passed. So it is rendered like this way. And you can implement it in real life projects. You will see how it is done very soon. So that is how we do it. And what is the structure of this? Like the props. So it is kind of an object like this. It is a JavaScript object which has some keys and some values. So number second, A 1, B 2. It would appear to the code to the compiler like this, and then it would extract information from there. So that is how it works. And apart from doing this, when you want to directly access the number A and B, what you can do, you can destructure the object. So there is something which is known as destructuring in JavaScript. You should study about it on the internet. So destructuring means we extract the information inside the object. So we know it is an object. We just saw props is an object. What is inside the object? We know that too, because we have defined it ourselves only. So here we write number, comma, A, comma, B. Okay. And now when we write number, we'll see that, because number is, this something. So we access the attributes like this too. A and B are not used inside my component, so they are grayed out, but you can use them too, like A and then B. So that would perform the same thing. So you can either write props here, or you can destructure your attributes and then use them individually. So either way. So a lot of theory and very basics. We should actually jump onto a real life project. Okay. So before that, one more advantage of React is the support of hundreds of npm packages that we get. So if you go to npmjs.com, and you can search anything, like email validator. So if you want to validate an input from the user that it is an email or not, so you have a tool for such simple thing too. You don't have to check if it contains an @ sign or a .com or a it is a valid domain or anything. You just install it and start using it using the usage written in JavaScript or TypeScript. So this is npm. It provides you with hundreds of tools which you can from which you can outsource your work. So npm is the savior. And now let's jump onto a real life project. So we the web developers at GDSC have built a portal for you guys that would be open after the workshops, and we would be collecting feedbacks from you. So let's learn how we actually made it. Okay, let's make it together. So seeing this is the prototype. If you have attended Nikhil's workshop yesterday on UI UX, he would have told you about UI UX a lot, and he developed this prototype too. So we were given this. Okay, so now as a front-end developer, you need to think how to make this website. So first of all, what is the first thing you need to do to proceed with the website? You are going to build it with React. Okay, you know about components, you know about props. How would you proceed? So the first thing we do is identify distinct components. We talked about components a lot, right? I don't think you want to revisit there again. So we talked about components. So what are the different kinds of components you can identify here? Could take your time. You could answer in the chat box, please, if any one of you can identify. We can take a pause for a minute or so. Let me know in the chat box what are the various kinds of components, or you can unmute too. Are you guys sleeping? Because I don't see any inputs from my side. Hello, proxy लगा रहे हो सब? बताओ यार, मतलब components क्या होते हैं? Building blocks होते हैं, skeletons of the website. Okay, so what are the building blocks here? This is a box you see which is independent of everything on everything else on the page. It is a header of the website. So this is a component. Now these are the various blocks, right? So these are independently functioning units of the website. Just like I showed you my portfolio, there were boxes representing my projects. So here there are boxes for feedbacks where there is a message and there is a name of the author and the social media links of the author. So this as a whole is a component in itself. These all are components. And then there is a button on click of which you will see a form where you can input all this information to be posted on this portal. So this button is a component in itself. And then when the form opens, that form is an input. Then the form is also a component in itself. So these are the various kinds of inputs. Okay. So for better understanding, I've marked them out. So you can see in the this header is a component, this item is a component, feedback item, this button is a component. So we start by outlining what should be the components, then we start building them. So now let us have a look at the code. Since time is running short, I would show you a quick glimpse of it. So let us jump on to the actual code. So this is our website. Okay, so this is the code for our website. So you don't need to see this, don't need to see this, don't need to see this. So first of all, observe similarities. The structure of our app is same, right? There is node modules which contains the packages downloaded from npm. Darshan would tell you more about it. Here is node modules, the public and the src directories. Here we have them. The components directory, we have the components directory here too. The app.js, index.js, and index.css files. So we have them, right? So this remains same throughout most of our React projects. Then we start defining components of the website inside the components directory. It is not mandatory to define them here, but it is advisable. It is a good practice. So what is the first component we see? We see this header. Okay, so we make a header.js file. What do? We write some HTML code, some JSX code instead. So there is a div. Of course, it is a box. So it is a div. And then what is there? And a logo of DSC. Then there is an image which contains the logo. And then there is Developer Students Club written and Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology. So this whole can also be an image, but we decided that we should keep this different and we should write this as text. So we wrote it in H1 tag, we wrote Developer Students Club. In S3, we wrote Thapar ye. So when we rendered, when we include this in the app.js, so in our app.js, there is a return statement. Okay. And then there is header. So when this is done, this is rendered on the screen. And then we move on to defining some other components. Okay. So then we have, we already have this. So let me make it run and show it to you. See, so we included the header. So here it is being rendered, and we still have to code the components for this and the remaining part. So we'll see how it is done. So once we have made the header, we move on to the next component. The next component is this feedback item, this box which contains this. So you can suppose information coming to you in the sense that there is a JavaScript object which contains the message from the feedback and the name of the author, and I'll just show you it. So the information coming to you should be of the form object. All right, and then there is a message field with some text in it, and then there is a name field with the name of the author, and then there are social media links such as GitHub and everything, so you can include the URLs in it. And then there are various kinds of social media links, okay, so LinkedIn and everything. So this is the kind of information you are getting. So now what do you want to do with it? You need to create a box. All right, then you need to first render this message information on top of it. Below that, you need to render this name information, and then the various icons for this depending on the name of the social media. So just now we learned about props. So we can think of such a component, like feedback list, feedback item we can call it, which takes a feedback attribute. Okay, so here when we are rendering, it takes a feedback attribute which contains the object feedback, and it is same as this object, which contains the message, the name, and the social media icons. And then when it has it, then it renders the feedback.message inside the paragraph tag, and then the feedback.name, because it is an object on its own. Just like props, we access the values inside an object using the dot operator. So feedback is an object. It contains name, message, and GitHub and everything. So we access that information with the dot operator. It is a JavaScript syntax. So we render that in the span, and then we create another div. Okay, and then we render an anchor tag in which the link is to the GitHub, and then this is an icon. This is another component. This is an icon you can which you get from the React icons pack. You can download that from npm. So this is how you render that image, the GitHub image you see, and you enclose whole of that in an anchor tag, because when you want to when you click it, then you want to be redirected to the GitHub of that user who posted that feedback. Similarly for LinkedIn, similarly for Twitter. And this additional information that you are seeing is just an error check. We are checking that if feedback.github exists, that this thing is there in this object or not. The length, it is a string, so does it have any length or not? If it does not have any length, then there is no point of rendering a GitHub icon on that box, right? Because it does not lead you anywhere. It doesn't redirect you. So we do not render GitHub in that case. So this is just a check that if there is GitHub and if it has some length, then it is a URL. So we'll redirect it using the anchor tag. So this part of the code is due to that. Similarly for every social media icon. So this is how we are making a normal feedback item. And similarly, we have created every component. For the button, we have just enclosed some text in a button. We have written add review, and before that we have rendered a plus sign. This is also an icon, and you get it from React icons. It is an npm package. Do search React icons on npm when you start with your React package. It really is implemented in most of the React projects. So here, when you click of the button, you do something. You perform a function written in JavaScript. So this is what is happening. So for this workshop, it is not very advisable, to go into depths and everything and how this is happening. You should explore that on your own. It is just a head start for you, that how you need to begin with React. So that is how it is done. And once we have made all the components and integrated them, and finally we have listed them in the app.js, the header, the feedback list, and the add review button, the delete form, the add form, everything, all the components we have made. So the website is finally functional. We can we click this, we see this form, we fill the name, we fill the GitHub URL, we fill the Twitter URL if we feel like, we skip any URL if you want. It is not mandatory. The only fields that are mandatory are these asterisk one, and then we provide some feedback. For example, we do this, and here is a passphrase field too, which we'll discuss later. It is for deleting the feedback in the future if we want. So like anything, I put okay. So when we submit this, you can see a feedback here. All right, and you can see that live on the feedback dsctit.tech portal, which would be up for you guys too. So how do you do that? You do this by creating components and linking them together and making them function. So this is a task for you. You need to create a similar web page or website which performs some basic tasks like adding some things on the screen and then deleting them later. And only client side. You don't need to link it to backend necessarily. For the front end people, I'm saying. And if you want to create a full stack app, that is very nice. So once you have done this, you have identified components, you have made them, you have integrated them, and everything works. You push npm start and it would display. So what next? So behind every good front end, there is an introvert backend, okay, which no one knows about, most of the people. So the front end is visible to the users, but not the backend. So if it was only front end, then you would have lost every information you have on this space, like this information, the object, once you reload, unless you are storing them in cookies or in local storage, which is a different thing. So, and that too, after refreshing the cookies or local storage or browsing history, everything, we can lose that. But if we want the data to be persistent and we want that to stay, and we need to fetch that periodically, so we need something which stores the data and which computes some perform some computation on the data. So for that purpose, we have backend and databases. So Darshan would continue on backends and databases, and thank you so much, and I'll be continuing later again. Thank you for your time. I hope you got what I tried to showcase to you. I tried my best to make it as basic as possible. And if you have any doubts, you can put them in the chat box, or you can contact anyone at DSC through our Discord channels at any point of time. So thank you, and Darshan, please take over.
Thanks, Yash. It was actually a great workshop. Yeah, and also if you have any doubts related front end, Yashwardhan can be tagged on any of the web development channels in Discord. And we will also be sharing you, we will be sharing you with the feedback portal they only made. So you can kind of test out the platform as well. So over to you, Darshan. Over to Darshan now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Raghav. And thank you, Yash. That was a very beautiful workshop on front end. And I hope you guys understood how React works, कैसे चीजें होती है front end के अंदर. And so after you've done HTML, CSS, JS, now you know React. So basically now you have a good idea of front end. So what is the next step? So the next step is backend. So with that, I'll share my screen. 1 second. So can you tell me if my screen is visible?
Yeah, the screen is.
Okay, perfect. So I don't think many of you might be having an idea about backend just now. You are still in your second year. Most of the people who start web development will start with front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So you don't need to worry. This is just like a guide on backend development. And I'm a core at DSC. My name is Darshan Patel, and I've been practicing web development from 2.5 years. So essentially, before even starting college, I got introduced to web development, and I've made many projects in web development, taken part in hackathons, and as you know, Yash also showed you a project that we made this time. So that is a very basic project, and I'll be giving you all the details ki whatever happens in the backend, kya concepts are backend ke, and everything. So I think we should get started on that. So first of all, let's see ki in this guide what all will we be learning. So first we'll see what is backend actually, and what are the backend technologies out there in the market. You can choose from any of them. It is a personal preference. I'll tell you a little bit about many popular ones. And for this project, we'll be focusing more on Node.js that I'll get to later in the session. Next, we have a brief on APIs, routes, and endpoints. So once you become a developer, you'll be talking in terms of APIs, routes, and endpoints a lot. So a basic knowledge of what they are is going to be very crucial for you guys. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll come to JSON and what is a JavaScript object. I think Yash already showed you how a JavaScript object looks like. We'll just talk what JSON is and why is it necessary. Then we'll come to Node.js and NPM. So Node.js is the backend that we are focusing on for this workshop. But it is only like one of the examples. You can choose anything you want, but only for the sake of the workshop, we'll go with Node.js. Then we will come to a little bit about databases and what is MongoDB, कि वो कैसा database है, and all that. And as an added bonus, we'll be showing you कि जो हम APIs बनाने वाले हैं in our backend, how do you check them? कैसे, how will you figure out कि are they working or not without the front end? कि जो backend में काम करते हैं, who develops a backend, does not need a client side to always check कि APIs काम कर रही है कि नहीं. So that also we'll discuss. So let me first tell you guys what exactly is backend. So as you know, backend is the server side of the website. तो जैसे यश ने तुम्हें बता दिया कि how you display the data in React, right? But ये data आ कहाँ से रहा है? User is entering data, where is it being saved? तुम ब्राउजर पे तो सेव कर नहीं सकते. अगर बहुत सारा डेटा हुआ तो तुम्हारी साइट स्लो हो जाएगी, है ना? So this data is actually being saved in a database. और जो भी कम्युनिकेशन है डेटाबेस के बीच में, पूरी साइट को हैंडल करने की कम्युनिकेशन, एवरीथिंग द बैकएंड विल टेक केयर ऑफ. तो बैकएंड विल फर्स्ट process the data that is coming in from the front end, and after the processing it will communicate with the database and store the information, या फिर जो भी task perform करना है वो perform करके देगा to the user. That is the front end. So first of all, basically we can see the various functions of the backend. Like, we have to create APIs in the backend, then we'll create libraries, and we'll also interact with some software components without any user interfaces. So ये सारे काम आते हैं under backend. तो ये एकदम brief सा idea था कि backend क्या होता है. And now let's see कि what are the different technologies. Popular कौन सी है अभी? So first आती है PHP. We already had a question on PHP, right? So PHP is basically a server-side scripting language. ठीक है, it is designed for web development. और इसका काम majorly तुम देखोगे this is working together and hand in hand with WordPress. So that is one of the web development fields if you want to choose WordPress or PHP की development में, so you can choose that. काफी sites already use WordPress and PHP. अगली है C++. So we already had a workshop on C++, right? So तुमने ये तो देख लिया होगा कि how it works as a programming language, but many of you might not be knowing कि it is also a backend language. It can be used as a backend language. Like, however, I don't recommend it. इतनी ज़्यादा use में है नहीं as a backend language, but yes, it can be used. This is only for your knowledge to remember कि C++ can also be used as a backend language. Then there is Java. Java though is quite popular. I think many of you might have heard of it. And Java is very, you can say like काफी fields में काम होता है Java में. Mobile development, web development, normal programming language as well. So versatile है काफी. But talking about web development, it has a very big user base, and you can see like many sites that are already working on Java. जब तुम अगर Java में web development सीखोगे, backend करोगे, so तुम्हें ये दिक्कत नहीं आएगी. Like in the market there are many Java web developers positions that are being looked after and all that. So then we have Python. So Python is quite popular these days now. It's becoming a trend to go with Python as the web development backend language like Django and all that. So it is basically a programming language that can also be used as a backend language, and it lets you work quickly and integrate systems quite nicely and efficiently. So Python is a great choice if you want to go with backend web development. And then there is Node.js. So now Node.js is quite different from all the four I've talked about till now. It is not a language, and it is also like not a framework like any of these. Node.js basically JavaScript में लिखी गई है, and it is a cross-platform runtime environment. तो ये बस एक environment है that is used to run JavaScript outside the browser. तो अभी how Yashwardhan showed you कि JavaScript browser के अंदर कैसे रन हो रही है. Normal जो तुम्हें आती है HTML, CSS, JS, तो वो JS भी browser के अंदर रन हो रही है. But Node.js क्या है? ये basically हमारा server बनाने के लिए है, और server is basically outside the browser. ठीक है, तो उसकी प्रोग्रामिंग के लिए जो JavaScript यूज होती है उसके एनवायरनमेंट को हम Node.js बोलते हैं. सो अब मैं तुम्हें थोड़ा एग्जांपल दे दूंगा ऑफ पॉपुलर साइट्स व्हिच आर ऑलरेडी यूजिंग. लेट्स गो विद, जैसे नेटफ्लिक्स हो गया. तो नेटफ्लिक्स इज वन ऑफ द साइट्स जिसके डेवलपमेंट में Node.js यूज की गई है. अनदर गुड एग्जांपल इज पेपैल. पेपैल के अंदर भी Node.js टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज हुआ है. एंड देन वी हैव उबर. जैसे many of you might be using Uber as well. तो इसकी वेबसाइट बनाने में भी Node.js यूज की गई है. एंड देन देयर आर मेनी मोर एग्जांपल्स. वॉलमार्ट हो गया या फिर कुछ भी. सो इट बेसिकली मेरा बताने का यही मतलब है कि इट इज क्वाइट अ पावरफुल लैंग्वेज. एंड अगर तुम्हें वेब डेवलपमेंट में जाना है, सो पाइथन और Node.js में से कुछ चूज करना वुड बी लाइक फॉर अ बिगिनर वुड बी रिकमेंडेड. मेरी साइड से पर्सनल ओपिनियन है. यू कैन गो विथ एनी ऑफ दीज इफ यू वांट. ठीक है, पर्सनल प्रेफरेंस होता है ये तो. बट इफ आई वाज टू सजेस्ट, आई वुड गो विथ पाइथन या Node.js के साथ शुरू करो. एंड Node.js तुम्हारे लिए एक पॉइंट पे इजी इसलिए रहेगी क्योंकि यू ऑलरेडी नो जावास्क्रिप्ट, है ना. अगर तुमने रिएक्ट भी किया हो तो और भी बेटर. यू विल नो जावास्क्रिप्ट अच्छे से एकदम. सो विच इज वाई ऑल्सो मेनी स्टूडेंट्स दे ऑप्ट फॉर Node.js व्हेन दे गो फॉर बैकएंड. So okay, now let's come to another topic. This is not particular to any backend language. ये एक broad topic है, APIs. So what is APIs? API का full form क्या होता है पहले तो? API का full form होता है Application Programming Interface. अब ये तुम्हें बहुत सुनने मिलेगी when you start becoming a developer. लोगों के साथ collaborate करोगे, so they'll be talking about APIs and what is it. सो API इज एप्लीकेशन प्रोग्रामिंग इंटरफेस। तो पहले ये मॉडल देख लो, इट हैज़ वन क्लाइंट इट एंड अ सर्वर। इसको क्या जोड़ रहा है? API जोड़ रही है, ठीक है। सो दिस इज बेसिकली द इंटरफेस एक्टिंग बिटवीन द सर्वर एंड द क्लाइंट। तो API का फुल फॉर्म जो होता है एप्लीकेशन प्रोग्रामिंग इंटरफेस। इसमें एप्लीकेशन जो है वो हमारे क्लाइंट हो गया एक एप्लीकेशन, और एक सर्वर हो गया हमारा एप्लीकेशन, और ये इसके बीच का इंटरफेस है। दैट मीन्स इट विल हेल्प कम्युनिकेट बिटवीन द बोथ ऑफ देम। तो अगर उसकी फॉर्मल डेफिनेशन पे जाएंगे, so it is a mechanism that allows two software components to communicate with each other using a set of defined protocols. So basically communication of the server and client is done through the API, which is based on some protocols. तो ये तो एक बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग है कि व्हाट इज API। तो अब बहुत सारी टाइप्स की API होती है, वेब API होती है, REST APIs होती है। तो ये सब क्या होता है? For our workshop, we will only be focusing on what is a web API and REST API, क्योंकि this is what's important to us. Web API क्या होता है? काफ़ी डिफरेंट नहीं होती फ्रॉम अ नॉर्मल API। वेब API के अंदर जो दो सॉफ्टवेयर कंपोनेंट्स हैं, दैट आई जस्ट मेंशन्ड कि इट हेल्प्स कम्युनिकेशन बिटवीन टू सॉफ्टवेयर कंपोनेंट्स। तो वो जो दो सॉफ्टवेयर कंपोनेंट्स है विल बी अ वेब सर्वर एंड अ वेब ब्राउजर। अभी जो यशवर्धन ने तुम्हें करके दिखाया था, एवरीथिंग दैट वाज द वेब ब्राउजर साइड, ठीक है। And what I am going to show you in a couple of minutes is what is the web server side. तो बट बिफोर दैट वी शुड नो कि डेटा जा कैसे रहा है, फ्रंट एंड और बैक एंड कम्युनिकेट कैसे करते हैं। सो फॉर दैट वी शुड हैव अ बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ व्हाट API इज। तो वेब API में कुछ नहीं है, एक वेब ब्राउजर होता है और एक वेब सर्वर होता है, उसके बीच का जो भी कम्युनिकेशन होता है वो वेब API संभालती है। देन वील गो टू व्हाट इज अ REST API. सो REST API इज अ स्पेशल काइंड ऑफ वेब API जिसके अंदर देयर इज प्री डिफाइंड फंक्शंस, जैसे गेट हो गया, पुट हो गया, पोस्ट हो गया एंड डिलीट हो गया। तो अब तुम पूछोगे ये क्या है, ये क्या बोलोगे? गेट, पुट, पोस्ट, डिलीट, ये सब क्या है? सो बेसिकली ये फंक्शंस हैं। अब क्लाइंट को देखो, सर्वर को तो पता नहीं कि करना क्या है एक्चुअली, जो भी डेटा आ रहा है उसका। तो सर्वर ने तो पॉइंट्स बना दिए, जैसे सर्वर बोलेगा कि गेट पे डेटा सेंड करो अगर तुम्हें कुछ डेटा चाहिए, तो पोस्ट पे डेटा सेंड करो अगर आपको कुछ डेटा डेटाबेस में डालना है, तो पुट करो अगर कोई डेटा अपडेट करना हो तो, और डिलीट डिलीट पे भेजो अगर तुम्हें कोई डेटा डिलीट करना हो। तो बेसिकली ये एंड पॉइंट्स बना देते हैं सर्वर, और इसकी मदद से क्लाइंट विल सेंड डेटा ओवर देयर, और सर्वर को पता होगा कि उस डेटा के साथ आप करना क्या है। सो फॉर दैट रीजन वी विल हैव वेरियस एंड पॉइंट्स, ठीक है। एंड जो प्रोटोकॉल यूज होता है REST API में, दैट इज द HTTP प्रोटोकॉल, जो अपने वेब ब्राउजर्स में नॉर्मली यूज होता है, हाइपरटेक्स्ट ट्रांसफर प्रोटोकॉल। आई थिंक यू गाइस हैव ऑलरेडी स्टडीड अबाउट इट, या फिर कुछ आइडिया होगा तुम्हें। तो ठीक है, तो REST API कुछ नहीं है, इट इज अ स्पेशल काइंड ऑफ वेब API जिसके अंदर यू विल हैव फंक्शंस लाइक गेट, पुट, पोस्ट एंड डिलीट, ठीक है। एंड इट इज हैंडल्ड ओवर द HTTP। तो इतना ही याद रखना है तुम्हें। Now let's talk about routes and endpoints. तो another common term when we go for web development is, तुम्हें ये भी सुनने बहुत मिलेगा कि routes क्या होती है, endpoints क्या होते हैं। तो बहुत माइन्यूट सा डिफरेंस है इन दोनों के बीच में। अभी जैसे मैंने तुम्हें endpoints के बारे में बताया कि there is a get endpoint, पुट के लिए endpoints होते हैं, ठीक है, डिलीट के लिए होते हैं या फिर पोस्ट करने के लिए होते हैं। तो एंड पॉइंट्स आर द फंक्शंस, जो भी फंक्शन करते हैं उसे हम एंड पॉइंट बुलाते हैं, और राउट है जो उसका नाम होता है। तो अब मैं तुम्हें जस्ट दिखाऊं, चलो फेसबुक का एग्जांपल लेते हैं, फेसबुक की साइट का। तो ये जो URL तुम्हें दिख रहा है ये अपना राउट है। इसमें जैसे मैंने लिख दिया लॉगिन, तो अब ये अपना लॉगिन राउट आ गया, ठीक है। अब इसके अंदर, जैसे लॉगिन राउट के अंदर अब दो एंड पॉइंट्स हुए ना। सबसे पहले कि जैसे ही मैंने लॉगिन लिखा तो वेब ब्राउजर ने गेट करके मुझे ये पेज दिखा दी। अब पेज तो आ गया हमारे पास लॉगिन से। अब इसका ये गेट राउट हो गया। अब एक और राउट होगा इसमें, अगर तुम देखोगे तो हमें एक फॉर्म दिया गया है, ठीक है। तो अब ये फॉर्म के अंदर अगर हमने डेटा भरा और लॉगिन पे दबाया, तो अब ये डेटा जाएगा कहाँ? ये तो क्लाइंट साइड है, तो अब ये डेटा जाएगा बैकएंड को। अब बैकएंड को कैसे पता है इस डेटा के साथ करना क्या है? तो लेकिन जब ये फॉर्म के अंदर भर के जो भी डेटा जाता है ना, उसे हम पोस्ट रिक्वेस्ट के थ्रू भेजते हैं, और डेटाबेस को पता होता है उसके साथ फिर कि पोस्ट रिक्वेस्ट के थ्रू डेटा है तो ऐसे डेटा को कैसे संभाला जाए। ठीक है, तो लॉगिन राउट में अब हमारे पास दो हो गई, एक गेट है, गेट से ये पेज आ रहा है और ये पेज भी बैकएंड के थ्रू डेटा ला रहा है कुछ ना कुछ। तो ये पेज रेंडर होने के लिए जो भी डेटा आएगा दैट इज गेट राउट, और जो भी डेटा भर के भेजोगे दैट विल बी द पोस्ट राउट। तो ये जो गेट और पोस्ट है ये हमारे एंड पॉइंट्स है, और ये जो नाम दिया गया है हमें facebook.com/login ये हमारा राउट हो गया। ठीक है, तो इतना ही समझने की ज़रूरत है। एक एग्जांपल मैं दे दूंगा तुम्हें अभी। लाइक ये एग्जांपल है, जैसे मैंने अभी फेसबुक का लिया। वी कैन टेक दिस एग्जांपल एज एक डॉग की वेबसाइट मान लो, जिसके अंदर डिस्प्लेज अ लिस्ट ऑफ ऑल द डॉग्स, डिस्प्लेज फॉर्म टू ऐड अ न्यू डॉग, है ना। तो इसके अंदर तुम्हें दिख रही है एपीआई जो एंड पॉइंट्स है, जैसे डॉग के अंदर दो एंड पॉइंट्स है, स्लैश डॉग्स के अंदर एक गेट है एक पोस्ट है। ठीक है, जैसे आईडी के अंदर ये वाले के अंदर भी दो एंड पॉइंट्स है, पुट है डिलीट है। तो ये सारे फंक्शंस हो गए हमारे। और जो ये नाम दिया गया इसे, अगर यहाँ कुछ कुछ भी होता नाम पूरा, तो उसे हम एक राउट बुलाते हैं। स्लैश डॉग्स तो बस जैसे स्लैश लॉगिन बताया मैंने वैसे स्लैश डॉग्स है यहाँ, तो वैसे द फुल थिंग इज कॉल्ड द राउट एंड दीज आर जस्ट द एंड पॉइंट्स। ठीक है, तो अब हमने ये समझ लिया है कि एपीआईज क्या होती है, व्हाट इज अ वेब एपीआई, जो वेब ब्राउजर और वेब सर्वर के बीच में कम्युनिकेट करने को हेल्प करती है। तो अब ये कम्युनिकेशन जो होता है उसका मीडियम क्या है, मतलब इसके अंदर जो डेटा जाता है वो किस फॉर्मेट में जाता है, स्ट्रिंग भेज रहे हैं, इंटीजर भेज रहे हैं, क्या भेज क्या रहे हैं हम बेसिकली। सो दिस इज वेयर जेसॉन कम्स इन। जेसॉन का फुल फॉर्म होता है जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट नोटेशन। तो इसमें यही है, लेट मी शो यू विद द हेल्प ऑफ एन एग्जांपल कि मैं बोलना क्या चाह रहा हूँ। सो ये हमारा जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट है, कॉन्स्ट नोट करके इसमें नेम डाला हुआ है हमने, एक मैसेज डाला हुआ है और एक पास फ्रेज पास किया है। जैसे यशवर्धन ने दिखाया, दिस इज द फॉर्मेट ऑफ जो प्रोजेक्ट हमने अभी बनाया है डीएससी के थ्रू, द रिव्यू साइट उसी का है ये। एंड व्हाट वुड बी द जेसन इक्विवेलेंट ऑफ दिस। तो मैंने ऑब्जेक्ट तो दे दिया, जब ये ऑब्जेक्ट पास होता है इट इज कन्वर्टेड टू जेसन, जिसके अंदर वो ट्रैवल करता है थ्रू द एपीआई एंड जेसन फॉर्मेट में जो बैकएंड है वो उसे रिसीव करता है। अब मैं बताऊंगा तुम्हें कि व्हाई इट इज इन जेसन फॉर्मेट, बट बिफोर दैट लेट्स लुक एट दिस। अब ये है, इससे तुम्हें बेटर समझ आएगा व्हाट इज जेसन ऑब्जेक्ट और जेसन, मतलब बहुत सिमिलर है। एक ऑब्जेक्ट है और एक है उसकी नोटेशन, तो मतलब ये समझ लो कि इसी से डिराइव हुआ है जेसन। ठीक है, तो लेट मी टेल यू कि व्हाई वी यूज जेसन फॉर एज द डेटा। ठीक है, नोटेशन। तो पहली बात तो जेसन है बहुत लाइट वेट है फॉर स्टोरिंग एंड ट्रांसपोर्टिंग डेटा। क्यों लाइट वेट है ये, बिकॉज इसमें ज़्यादा चेंजेस नहीं हो रहे हैं। जैसा हमें ऑब्जेक्ट जिस पे हम काम कर रहे हैं जो ऑब्जेक्ट है एकदम उसी के जैसा हमारा फॉर्मेट है भेजने के लिए ट्रांसपोर्टिंग डेटा। एंड देन बेसिकली ये काफ़ी हमारे बैकएंड में भी हम काफ़ी जो काम करते हैं दैट इज़ इन जेसन। डेटा स्टोरेज में जो आगे बताऊंगा इन डेटाबेस वो भी जेसन के थ्रू होती है। सो द प्रेफर्ड फॉर्मेट फॉर एक्सचेंज ऑफ डेटा इज जेसन, मैं याद रखो। अब मैं तुम्हें एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ दिखाऊंगा इससे पहले, शुरू होने से पहले, इज व्हाट इज अ जेसन वैलिडेटर। से तुम्हें थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस करना हो अपना जेसन और मतलब कॉन्सेप्ट। तो अगर मैंने यहाँ लिखा होता, अगर मैं एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाता, लेट्स टेक द एग्जांपल ऑफ दिस वन। ठीक है, इसके अंदर जो हमारे पास जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट है नोट नाम का, अगर मैं यहाँ ये लिखता, ठीक, और इसके अंदर मैं डाल देता, जैसे मेरे पे नेम था, नेम में आई रोट दर्शन मेरा नाम, देयर इज अ मैसेज, इसके अंदर कुछ भी लिख दो, इट वाज अ ग्रेट वर्कशॉप या कुछ भी वट एवर यू फील, एंड अ पास फ्रेज, ये तुम्हारे डिलीट के लिए जो हेल्प करती है, इसमें 1 2 3 डाल दो। तो अभी ये तो ऑब्जेक्ट का फॉर्मेट है, तो जेसन सीधा सीधा तुम्हें बताएगा कि गलत फॉर्मेट है, ये ऐसे नहीं भेज सकते। तो तुम्हें इसे जेसन में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए कुछ नहीं करना है। ऑल द कीज, ये जो की होती है और ये वैल्यू होती है, ऑल द ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर जो भी डेटा स्टोर होता है वो की वैल्यू पेयर्स में होता है। ये तुम्हें बेसिक प्रोग्रामिंग नॉलेज से पता चलेगा, बट व्हाट आई एम फोकसिंग ऑन हियर इज कि जो भी हमने ऑब्जेक्ट है उसे जेसन में कैसे कन्वर्ट करो. So for that, we need to put all the keys inside strings. And data type के हिसाब से डेटा होना चाहिए वहाँ, जो ऑलरेडी है तीनों स्ट्रिंग्स में. ठीक है, तो से वैलिडेट किया मैंने. तो अब दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल अ वैलिड जेसन फॉर्मेट. ठीक है, इसके अंदर ये सारे की स्ट्रिंग्स के अंदर है. सो बहुत कम डिफरेंस होता है, बहुत इजीली कन्वर्ट हो जाती है जेसन और जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट से जेसन के अंदर एक फंक्शन के थ्रू. इन बैकएंड इट इज समथिंग लाइक जेसन डॉट स्ट्रिंगिफाई यूज होता है. उस डिटेल में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है, बट दिस इज बेसिकली इतना याद रखो कि वी यूज जेसन टू ट्रांसपोर्ट डेटा बिटवीन अ सर्वर एंड अ वेब पेज. ठीक है, एपीआई के थ्रू. नेक्स्ट लेट्स गेट टू सम इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट, थोड़ी कोडिंग भी हो जाए. तो फॉर दैट लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड विद Node.js. I picked Node.js because मैंने भी Node.js की हुई है, and since you guys already know JavaScript, which I assume most of you know. अगर नहीं आती है तो भी ठीक है, दिक्कत नहीं है. I'm not going to do some very complex coding, बहुत simple सी होगी. And before getting into the actual coding, थोड़ा बता देता हूँ कि what is Node.js and what is npm. तो Node.js is nothing, not a language, not a framework. It is a cross-platform runtime environment. JavaScript को ब्राउजर के बाहर कैसे रन करते हैं, उससे सर्वर कैसे बनाते हैं, that is all the work of Node.js. And as you can see, compared to all the different languages that we saw, Java, Python, PHP, so these are काफी old languages, okay? But Node.js was developed quite recently, 2009 में ही only it was developed. And from that time till now, we have like so much user base. Uska user base has grown exponentially. And as you know, npm is the world's largest software registry. ठीक है, तो हम as Yash already showed you, but I'll show you again कि जो npm है ना, it is basically used for जैसे Node.js अकेले कुछ नहीं है. All the packages we import, all the functionalities सारी हम npm से लेके define करते हैं. They already have packages for everything imaginable. npm के under
Darshan,
yes.
Darshan, sorry to interrupt. एक question आया था अरमान से. In keys we send information as strings only. ये
नहीं,
question था अरमान का.
हाँ ओके, सो लेट मी टेल यू. इसके अंदर जो हम भेज रहे हैं, दिस इज द की, दिस इज द वैल्यू. ठीक है, सो कीज तो हम ठीक है स्ट्रिंग्स में भेज रहे हैं, दैट शुड बी द पॉइंट की स्ट्रिंग में होनी चाहिए. बट however the value is not necessarily should be a string. अगर वैल्यू नंबर के फॉर्म में है तो यू कैन पुट इट इन अ नंबर, बट फॉर द की पार्ट इट शुड बी अ स्ट्रिंग. क्योंकि मैं तुम्हें एग्जांपल दिखा देता हूँ वापस. यू से मैंने यहाँ ये लिखा है, बट मैंने यहाँ से स्ट्रिंग हटा दी. ठीक है, ऐसे ही पास कर रहा हूँ मैं, तो आपको सीधा समझ आ जाएगा दिस इज नॉट अ वैलिड जेसन फॉर्मेट. मैं तुम्हें फॉर्मेट बता रहा था कि इसके बिना क्या बोलते हैं, वेब बैकएंड को डेटा पढ़ना मुश्किल हो जाएगा. बट लेट्स चेक दिस. अगर हाँ देखो, जैसे ये स्ट्रिंग है, ये नंबर है दिख रहा है मुझे. सो इट इज नॉट नेसेसरी तुम इसे स्ट्रिंग जैसे ही पास करो, पास इट एज वॉट एवर द वैलिड डेटा टाइप इज. वैल्यू में डिफरेंस नहीं करता, बट द की यस इट शुड बी पास्ड एज अ स्ट्रिंग. और ये तुम्हें मैनुअली करने की जरूरत नहीं होने वाली. दिस इज ओनली फॉर योर कॉन्सेप्ट. मैं बता रहा हूँ, देयर आर ऑलरेडी फंक्शंस इन जावास्क्रिप्ट जो ये कर देते तो मान लिए. ओके, सो ओनली फॉर कॉन्सेप्ट दिस इज इम्पॉर्टेंट. बाकी यू कैन सर्च फॉर इट, या फिर जब तुम वेब डेवलपमेंट करना शुरू करोगे यू विल ऑलरेडी फाइंड फंक्शंस दैट डू दिस फॉर यू. सो आई होप दैट आंसर्स योर क्वेश्चन.
Yeah.
ओके, कुछ और है क्या, मैं देख लेता हूँ. ओके, नथिंग एल्स. सो लेट्स रिज्यूम जहाँ वेयर वी वर. कि हाँ, आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट npm. तो जैसे npm के अंडर already there's more than 8 lakh packages over here. So in such a short time, having so much already done under one language, you can see that it has been growing very exponentially. Or right now also Node.js is one of the top backend languages you can use. And JavaScript, and since it's written in JavaScript, which is I think top 2 में आ जाएगी in programming languages alone, तो you already know कि कितना strong है ये. And so that is why I also recommended कि अगर तुम्हें backend करना है, you can pick up Node.js as one of the options. So from there, अब थोड़ा कोडिंग कर लेते हैं. हमने काफ़ी कॉन्सेप्ट्स कवर किए हैं. हमने कवर किया है कि APIs क्या होती है, ठीक है. देन वी कवर्ड द मॉडल एंड देन राउट्स और एंड पॉइंट्स क्या होते हैं. तो अब इसको एक्चुअली थोड़ा प्रैक्टिकल में डाल के देखते हैं, ठीक है. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई विल ओपन माई VS कोड हियर, ठीक है. VS कोड दिख रहा है ना?
Yeah,
Raghav,
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So from here, let's just make any folder. मैं documents में जाके एक folder बना लेता हूँ. इसको boot क्या नाम दे दिया and open. तो हम we are inside this folder called web bootcamp. अब इसके अंदर let's open the terminal first. It doesn't matter Mac में हो या Windows में हो या VS Code में, you'll get an option to open the terminal and just make sure कि तुम web bootcamp के अपने folder के अंदर हो. So सबसे पहला चीज़ मैं जो तुम्हें दिखाऊंगा कि package.json कैसे initialize होगा. So you have to write npm net and enter. इसमें क्या लिखा है? The utility you can okay, yeah. So देखो यहाँ package name लिखा आ रहा है. This is all not important. You can press enter. अगर तुम्हें डालना हो तो डाल दो. This is important for later on, not right now. As a beginner, you can just create. इसका शॉर्टकट भी होता है. अगर तुम्हें इतना एंटर नहीं दबाना तो npm init और -y कर दो तो ये सब खुद हो जाएगा तुम्हारे लिए. So as you can see, हमारे पास एक package.json बन के आ गई. So ये क्या है? So basically जब भी we are working with npm ना, npm packages should always have a package.json in it. इसके through now we can acquire packages from npm and we can use it in our node project. ठीक है. तो I'll show you an example. सबसे पहले तो we'll make a file called app.js and enter. तो ये जो फाइल बनाई है मैंने app.js, you'll notice कि इसकी extension .js है. तो मतलब simply this file is written in JavaScript. ठीक है. इसमें ऐसा नहीं है जैसे React के अंदर we use something JSX. नई लैंग्वेज भी नहीं है. दिस इज सिंपल जावास्क्रिप्ट. अब तो जावास्क्रिप्ट तो आपको आती है. अगर नहीं आती तो मतलब ठीक है, इट्स प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेजेस सीख लोगे. सिंटैक्स ही डिफरेंट है, कॉन्सेप्ट तो सेम ही होता है. सो अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट आई विल शो यू कि इसमें मेन काम किस चीज़ का होता है. सो आई विल कम टू समथिंग कॉल्ड एक्सप्रेस. व्हेन वी आर वर्किंग विथ नोड, देखो नोड इज रिटन इन जावास्क्रिप्ट. अब developing everything from scratch is a very lengthy process, है ना. So this is why we use packages. Packages में we already have someone who's developed a certain feature और उसने as a package उसे npm में डाल दिया है. So as developers हमारा ये काम है कि we import these features inside our backend and we take advantage of it, कि हमें बार बार खुद कोड करने की जरूरत नहीं है. So अगर मैंने ये सारी routes बनाना जो अभी मैं तुम्हें सिखाने वाला हूँ, अगर ये हम Node.js से करते, it would take double the time. Instead, if we do it from Express essentially cuts the time down in half, है ना. And why do you think we use Express? Why एक certain package use कर रहे हैं हम Node के साथ? कि मैं तुम्हें ये वाला पैकेज क्यों बता रहा हूँ करने. तो पहले बताते हैं what is Express. Express is a Node.js का framework, ठीक है. It is used to build APIs and cross-platform mobile apps में भी यूज होता है. सो इट इज़ नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंटली ओनली फॉर वेब डेव, दूसरी चीज़ों में भी होता है. बट Node.js के साथ इसकी कंपैटिबिलिटी बहुत अच्छी है. एंड अगर तुम Node.js पढ़ रहे हो, यू विल ऑब्वियसली द फर्स्ट थिंग यू आर गोइंग टू लर्न इज एक्सप्रेस. और ये जैसे मैं npm के वेबसाइट पे आ गया एंड आई सर्च फॉर एक्सप्रेस, तो ये वेब पेज खुल के आया एंड एवरीथिंग यू नीड रिगार्डिंग दिस पैकेज विल बी इनसाइड दिस. इसमें हमें पहले बात तो ये बताया कि इसे यूज़ कैसे करते हैं, थोड़ा कोड बता दिया है. इंस्टॉल कैसे करते हैं वो भी बता दिया है. फीचर्स क्या है, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, फुल थिंग यू विल फाइंड ओवर हियर npm की साइट पे. ठीक है. तो एज अ बैकएंड डेवलपर तुम्हारे यही काम होने वाला है मोस्टली. इट इज़ नॉट फोकस्ड मोर ऑन द लैंग्वेज जो जावास्क्रिप्ट है. इट इज़ फोकस्ड कि तुम्हें कितना अच्छे से ये पैकेजेस यूज़ करना आते हैं how much functionality you can bring inside the backend, है ना? तो मैं तुम्हें सबसे पहला तुम्हारा स्टार्ट जो है इससे दूंगा. So I'm not even going to be coding from scratch. मैं सीधा इनका कोड उठाऊंगा और तुम्हें दिखाऊंगा कि कैसे काम हो रहा है. एक पैकेज जो वेबसाइट पे दिख रहा है हमें, वो हम Node.js के अंदर कैसे यूज कर रहे हैं. सो उसी के लिए फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट्स हेड बैक. अब यहाँ पे फर्स्ट वी आर गोइंग टू डाउनलोड दिस पैकेज. डाउनलोड के लिए जैसे तुम्हें देखा यहाँ, इंस्टॉलेशन इज npm install express. So we are going to install this package. We'll write npm install express, and as you can see it has been installed. तुम्हें कैसे पता कि ये पैकेज आ चुका है तुम्हारे पास? So which is when you can see कि package.json में एक चीज आ चुकी है. It is called dependencies, and under dependencies we have express and the version of express. ठीक है. तो जैसे ही तुम जितने भी npm के पैकेजेस डालते जाओगे, तुम्हारी डिपेंडेंसीज इंक्रीज होती जाएगी. सो अभी तो हमारे पास एक ही है विच इज एक्सप्रेस. ये हमारी जो APIs बिल्ड करने में हेल्प करेगी हमें, एंड आई विल बी शोइंग यू कि कैसे हेल्प करती है. सो सबसे पहला काम, जब भी कोई भी पैकेज हम इंस्टॉल करते हैं, तो सबसे पहला काम जो होता है, इट इज़ टू रिक्वायर दैट पैकेज. ठीक है. तो एक एक्सप्रेस के लिए तुम्हें बताया गया है कि कैसे रिक्वायर करते हो. दिस इज बेसिकली अ वेरिएबल, कुछ भी हो सकता है, बट इट इज़ गुड टू कीप इट द नेम ऑफ द पैकेज ओनली. इससे तुम्हें भी आइडिया रहेगा एज अ डेवलपर. दिस इज सम गुड कोडिंग प्रैक्टिस यू शुड इम्प्लीमेंट. तो हियर आई विल बी पेस्टिंग दिस. अब देखो, ये एक्सप्रेस हैज बीन रिक्वायर्ड. See, this is the thing that comes from writing npm install express. उसके बिना तुम रिक्वायर नहीं कर पाओगे उसे. सो ये लिखते ही यू कैन रिक्वायर इट इनटू अ वेरिएबल, एंड एक ऐप वेरिएबल होते हैं जिसके अंदर वी आर जस्ट कॉलिंग द एक्सप्रेस. इसके बाद लेट्स मूव ऑन टू एक्चुअली मेकिंग आवर फर्स्ट राउट विच इज दिस. अब तुम्हें इसमें एक कीवर्ड दिख रहा होगा, गेट. See, this get is the keyword that we talked about in our REST APIs. मैंने बताया ना, जैसे get होता है, put होता है, post होता है, and delete होता है. तो ये सारी different endpoints है तुम्हें. अभी इसके अंदर जो route है वो ये रही, slash route है. slash का मतलब क्या होता है? slash is basically our root route जैसे बोलते हैं हम. थोड़े सेम वर्ड्स है तो कंफ्यूज मत होना. रूट का मतलब है हमारी जो सबसे पहली राउट होती है, उससे हम स्लैश बोलते हैं. अब इसके आगे जैसे मैंने फेसबुक का एग्जांपल दिया, अगर वैसा हमें कुछ राउट बनानी होती तो हम स्लैश लॉगिन की राउट बनाते या फिर स्लैश रजिस्टर की राउट बनाते. बट फॉर दिस एग्जांपल ज़्यादा राउट्स है नहीं, इसमें ज़्यादा फंक्शनैलिटी भी नहीं है, तो उसके लिए वी आर जस्ट डूइंग एवरीथिंग इन द स्लैश राउट. अभी बताऊँगा कि एग्जैक्टली क्या होता है. सो हमने गेट राउट बनाई है जो हमें रिस्पॉन्स में भेज रही है हेलो वर्ल्ड. ठीक है. सो बिफोर दैट कि ये सब कहाँ कहाँ जा रहा है या फिर कहाँ से आ रहा है, लेट अस रन दिस. ये या मैंने ऐप डॉट लिसन किया और ये 3000 के, ये हमारा पोर्ट नंबर है बेसिकली. अब इसके अंदर वी कैन ऑल्सो डू कि console.log कर देता हूँ, टर्मिनल पे दिखे जब ये हमारी वेबसाइट अप हो रही है. ओके. तो मैंने एक एरो फंक्शन बना दिया और उसके अंदर मैंने लिख दिया console.log सर्विंग ऑन पोर्ट 3000. अब मैं इसे रन करता हूँ एक बार, एंड देन आई विल एक्सप्लेन इट टू यू कि अंदर इसके अंदर क्या हो रहा है. ये तो दिस इज द नॉर्मल सिंटैक्स ऑफ मेकिंग अ राउट, अ सिंपल राउट. ठीक है. तो ऐसे बनाते हैं हम एक सिंपल राउट, और इसके अंदर हम लिख देते हैं ये res डॉट सेंड जैसे हो गया. तो इसके एक चीज़ चेंज कर दूंगा मैं कि यहाँ एरो फंक्शन बना देता हूँ. ठीक है. उस पर अभी डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे क्यों ये बनाया या फिर क्यों किया. ऑल विल गो इन कि ये अपना एक बेसिक सिंटैक्स हो गया राउट बनाने का या फिर API बनाने का. अब हमने ये एंड पॉइंट गेट है इसका, और ये राउट हमारी स्लैश है. तो अब लेट्स सी हाउ वी एक्चुअली रन Node.js एप्लीकेशंस. सो फॉर रनिंग Node.js द प्री रिक्विजिट इज कि तुम्हारे पास ऑलरेडी Node.js इंस्टॉल्ड होना चाहिए अलॉन्ग विथ npm. साथ में बंडल्ड ही आता है, बट से हमारे पास, तो मैं एक बार बता देता हूँ कि कैसे कहाँ से इंस्टॉल होता है। उनकी साइट पे चले जाओ, एंड जैसे मैक है इसलिए मैक का दिखा रहा है। यू कैन डाउनलोड फॉर विंडोज़ और मैक एंड इंस्टॉल इट। सिंपल सा प्रोसेस है। इसकी गाइड मैंने ऑलरेडी दे रखी है। ओके, यहाँ पे रिसोर्सेज के अंदर आई ऑलरेडी शोड यू, गाइड दे रखी है दोनों, एक्सप्रेस की भी दे रखी है और नोड की भी दे रखी है, हाउ टू इंस्टॉल। ठीक है, आफ्टर दैट, सो वंस यू हैव इट इंस्टॉल्ड यू कैन रन अ कीवर्ड कॉल्ड नोड। अब जब हमें रन करना होता है, ये हमारी app.js इज द फाइल वी आर गोइंग टू बी रनिंग। ठीक है, सो वी राइट द कीवर्ड नोड एंड देन वी प्रेस app.js, एंड एज सुन एज आई प्रेस एंटर वी कैन सी कि इसमें लिखा है सर्विंग ऑन पोर्ट 3000। इसका क्या मतलब है कि हमारे बेसिकली वेब ब्राउजर होते हैं उस पर काफ़ी पोर्ट्स होते हैं, एंड वी जस्ट चूज वन पोर्ट दैट इज़ फ्री, एंड उस पर हम अपना बैकएंड अभी रन कर रहे हैं। ठीक है, लोकल होस्ट पे। तो अब हमारे पास, लेट्स ओपन दैट एंड शो यू। एज यू कैन सी, जैसे ही मैंने लोकल होस्ट 3000 पे गया, आई कैन सी हेलो वर्ल्ड रिटर्न। तो अब ये कैसा है, मैंने तो अभी कोई राउट हेड भी नहीं की है। तो बेसिकली जो हमारी रूट राउट होती है ना, वो खोलते ही आ जाती है। एंड बेसिकली अगर मैं ये स्लैश लिखूँ इट वुड मीन द एग्जैक्ट सेम थिंग। एंटर दबाऊंगा तो भी कोई डिफरेंस नहीं होगा, हेलो वर्ल्ड लिखा आएगा। सो दिस इज हाउ वी आर हिटिंग अ राउट। मतलब एक एंड पॉइंट हिट हो रहा है, जो गेट एंड पॉइंट है वो यहाँ हिट हो रहा है। एंड वेयर इज आवर एपीआई, ये रही, एंड हियर यू कैन सी इट्स रिटर्न हेलो वर्ल्ड। तो ऐसे ही काफ़ी एपीआईज बनती है। एंड यहाँ मैं लिख देता हूँ पोस्ट हो गया। अब पोस्ट तब कॉल होती है जब हमारे फ्रंट एंड से कोई डेटा भेजना होता है बैक एंड को। सो हियर वी हैव गेट, पोस्ट, ऐसे इधर इज पुट एंड डिलीट, है ना। तो देखो इसमें तुम्हें नोटिस किया होगा कि कितनी इजीली हम ये सब एपीआईज बना पा रहे हैं। एंड दिस वुड नॉट हैव बीन पॉसिबल अगर ये एक्सप्रेस नहीं हमने किया होता। यहाँ बस एक कीवर्ड चेंज करो, इट ऑलरेडी हैज द फंक्शंस दैट इज इनसाइड एक्सप्रेस, जो हमारे लिए काम कर दे रही है पूरा। एक्चुअली इट इज़ नॉट सच अ स्मॉल कोड। जब नोड.js में या जावास्क्रिप्ट में लिखोगे इसे, सो इट इज़ अ लेंदी प्रोसेस, इससे लंबा होता है। सो ओनली फॉर आर कन्वीनियंस वी आर यूजिंग अ पैकेज कॉल्ड एक्सप्रेस, एंड उसके थ्रू हम एपीआईज बना रहे हैं। तो ये हमारी एपीआईज बन गई। ठीक है, एंड दिस इज हाउ यू आर एसेंशियली ऑलरेडी स्टार्टेड कोडिंग योर बैकएंड। अब लेट्स गो टू द स्लाइड्स ऑन। यहाँ पे मैंने सेम चीज़ कोड में लिख के दिखाई हुई है फॉर योर रेफरेंस। इन केस तुम्हें ये स्लाइड्स मिलती है तो यहाँ हम कर देंगे शेयर, तब ये दिखा देंगे कोड सो दैट यू कैन ट्राई। मैंने पूरा प्रोसेस समझा दिया है तुम्हें कि सबसे पहले एक फोल्डर बनाओ, फोल्डर के अंदर npm init करो या npm init -y कर दो, सेम चीज़ है। एंड देन तुम्हारे पास पैकेज JSON आ जाएगी, create app.js, and first of all you will use express to create your APIs. okay, बहुत easy है express यूज करना। सारी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन तुम्हें मिल जाएगी npm की वेबसाइट पे यार, है ना। एंड npm का बस इतना ही काम नहीं होता है, काफ़ी काम होता है। मिडलवेयर हैंडल करती है और वो सब भी, मतलब वो एक्सप्रेस का मिडलवेयर हैंडल करती है और ये सब भी होता है, बट दैट इज गेटिंग डीपर इनटू बैकएंड, वहाँ तक मैं जाऊँगा नहीं। सो अभी के लिए हमने बैकएंड, मतलब हमने एज अ बिगिनर बैकएंड बना लिया है। हमने 4 राउट्स एपीआईज बना ली है, एक गेट की है, पोस्ट की है, पुट की है और डिलीट की है। अब अगर फ्रंट एंड से डेटा आना होता तो ये डेटा यहाँ पे आता इनसाइड दिस रिक्वेस्ट ऑब्जेक्ट, और फिर हम उसे एक्सेस करते और फिर कुछ रिस्पॉन्स भेजते। तो ये रेक और रेस्ट जो है, दे स्टैंड फॉर रिक्वेस्ट एंड रिस्पॉन्स। इतना याद रखना, ये ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर डेटा आता है और यहाँ हम भेजते हैं। बस उससे ज़्यादा डिटेल में मैं जाऊँगा नहीं, दैट यू कैन रिसर्च अबाउट, मैंने सारे रिसोर्सेज दे रखे हैं। सो दैट इज एसेंशियली हाउ यू गेट स्टार्टेड इन Node.js यूजिंग npm. आफ्टर दैट लेट्स गो टू डेटाबेसेस। थोड़ा ब्रीफ देने वाला हूँ मैं कि व्हाट आर डेटाबेसेस, हम कैसे डिसाइड करते हैं हमें कौन सा चाहिए अपने वेबसाइट के लिए। सो लेट्स गेट इन व्हाट आर डेटाबेसेस। सो डेटाबेस क्या होता है, बेसिकली एन ऑर्गेनाइज कलेक्शन ऑफ डेटा। इतना तो आइडिया सबको होगा ही कि डेटाबेसेस होता क्या है। बट जब हम वेबसाइट्स के बारे में बात करते हैं, सो वी लुक एट 2 काइंड्स ऑफ डेटाबेसेस। देयर आर मेनी काइंड्स, बट एसेंशियली जब हमें डिसीजन करना होता है कि कैसा चूज करना है, देयर आर 2। One is SQL databases and one is no SQL databases. तो SQL databases क्या होते हैं? These are the ones I think you guys must be more familiar with, जिसके अंदर tables होती है और rows या records होते हैं, है ना, relational database जैसे बोलते हैं. And then there is no SQL databases that are not relational. इसमें there is no tables or anything. Moreover, there is like collections होते हैं, documents होते हैं. So points तुम पढ़ सकते हो. I'll read them out for you once. कि SQL के अंदर there is structured query language and there's a predefined schema. मतलब एक टेबल जैसे देखते हो तो उसकी properties are predefined ना, और ज़्यादा हम चेंज करते नहीं है. So which is why they are better for multi-row transactions. कि मतलब सेम टाइप का डेटा तुम्हें स्टोर करते ही जाना है, बहुत बहुत बड़ा डेटा. So that is when you use SQL databases. And then there is something called no SQL databases. So this is the one that is like MongoDB जिसके अंदर आता है, and इसके अंदर डायनामिक स्कीमा होता है. मतलब इसकी जो जैसे क्या बोलते हैं डिटेल्स हो गए या फिर जो भी एट्रीब्यूट्स हो गए, दैट इज डायनामिक, चेंज होते रहते हैं, है ना. सो ऐसा नहीं है कि ओनली वन टाइप ऑफ डेटा इज गोइंग टू बी स्टोर्ड अगेन एंड अगेन. तुम्हारे पास बहुत सारा डिफरेंट टाइप का डेटा आता है. दैट टाइम यू चूज टू गो विथ नो एसक्यूएल डेटाबेसेस. ओके, एंड इसके अंदर जैसे यू सी कि इट्स फॉर अनस्ट्रक्चर्ड डेटा एंड जेसन अगर स्टोर करनी हो तो वी गो फॉर नो एसक्यूएल डेटाबेसेस, विच इज ऑल्सो द रीजन हम जेसन यूज कर रहे हैं. And that is why we are also going with MongoDB. Before diving into what is MongoDB, let's talk about some database operations. When you think about a database, तो तुम्हारे दिमाग में क्या आता है? Like what are the operations you can perform in a database? There can be something like you have to create a record या फिर कुछ data insert करना होगा, है ना. कुछ data चाहिए तुम्हें from the database. Then there is something like update. That means जो डेटा ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग है डेटाबेस के अंदर उसे चेंज करना हुआ. एंड डिलीट मतलब रिमूव द डेटा फ्रॉम द डेटाबेस. तो ये बेसिक 4 ऑपरेशन है जो तुम्हारे मन में आते हैं या फिर जब तुम सोचते हो कि यू कैन परफॉर्म विद द डेटाबेस, है ना. तो इसके लिए एक एक्रोनिम है ऑलरेडी, दैट इज कॉल्ड CRUD. रिमेंबर CRUD बिकॉज ये एक काफ़ी की कॉन्सेप्ट है अबाउट डेटाबेसेस एंड यू कैन रिलेट देम विद गेट, पुट, पोस्ट या डिलीट. उन्हीं के API उसी के लिए बनी होती है. ओके, एंड दे परफॉर्म दीज ऑपरेशंस. CRUD इसमें जो C है स्टैंड्स फॉर क्रिएट, R स्टैंड्स फॉर रीड, U स्टैंड्स फॉर अपडेट एंड D स्टैंड्स फॉर डिलीट. ठीक है, सो दैट इज द डेटाबेस ऑपरेशंस. एंड लेट्स गेट इनटू व्हाट इज MongoDB. तो MongoDB एक ओपन सोर्स नो SQL डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट प्रोग्राम है. सो इट इज ओपन सोर्स एंड ये नो SQL पैटर्न फॉलो करता है. ठीक है, तो इसके अंदर यू कैन स्टोर लाइक डायनामिक स्कीमा, यू कैन स्टोर डॉक्यूमेंट्स या तो जेसन फाइल, ये सब. सो इसके अंदर एक पॉइंट मैंने मेंशन किया है कि बीसॉन लिखा है मैंने. व्हाट इज बीसॉन? सो बीसॉन इज बेसिकली बाइनरी जेसन. सो बाइनरी मतलब इसमें एज यू कैन सी जो भी जेसन डेटा आता है ना हमारे पास, दैट इज कन्वर्टेड टू बाइनरी and then it is saved inside the database which is MongoDB. ठीक है, तो ये एक सेव कैसे सेव होता है inside the database that I told you. And then why do we use MongoDB with Node.js? Like ये दोनों साथ में इतना क्यों चलते हैं? There are many databases you can use with a backend. You are not limited to one. Okay, so but with Node.js the popular choice is to go with MongoDB. Why? ठीक है, तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल कि MongoDB नो SQL है एंड नोड के अंदर जो हमारे डेटा आते हैं एज जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट्स उसे जेसन में कन्वर्ट करके स्टोर करना बहुत इजी होता है. एंड एक ड्राइवर होता है MongoDB का, दैट इज द MongoDB Node.js ड्राइवर विच मेक्स MongoDB यूजिंग MongoDB एंड Node.js अ वेरी सीमलेस एक्सपीरियंस. अब कैसे बनाते हैं वो मैं तुम्हें बताता हूँ. सो जैसे मैंने बताया कि MongoDB के अंदर स्टोर होता है बाइनरी जेसन में डेटा. ठीक है, एंड ये डेटा है, इसको जो ड्राइवर है इट विल कंपाइल एंड कन्वर्ट टू जेसॉन और दे देगा Node.js को. तो ये जो प्रोसेस है ना ऑफ कंपाइलिंग कन्वर्जन, दिस इज वेरी स्मूथ, वेरी फास्ट, क्योंकि ज़्यादा कन्वर्जन है नहीं, सीधा बाइनरी से जेसन में कन्वर्ट करना है एंड बैकएंड कैन यूज दैट डेटा. तो मतलब literally with a few lines of code, you can go from MongoDB data and using it in the backend database. ठीक है? So this is why we use MongoDB. And with that, I think we have covered a lot of backend. It might have already been overwhelming for you guys, but trust me, this is only the core concepts that I taught you. Or backend is very vast. ठीक है? So for now, this is all. But before going, I will show you कि एक Postman करके we have a API client that will make it easy for us developers to test our APIs. तो हमने अभी जो कोड बनाया था, we put some routes here, right? तो अब ये routes को टेस्ट कैसे करेंगे? Routes तो बना लिया हमने, तो अब client जब ये हिट कर रही है, हिट हो भी रही है कि नहीं, वो देखने के लिए we have a feature, it is called Postman. ठीक है? इसे डाउनलोड करने के लिए you can just go to Postman. ऑनलाइन भी यूज होता है, you can use it online if you want, but I recommend you download this. यहाँ you can use it online if you want, but I have it already downloaded, so I'm going to show you in that. नहीं, यहाँ भी कर सकते हैं. So I'll close this and show you here. अगर डाउनलोड करोगे तो you'll get some kind of interface like this. इसके अंदर जैसे मैंने तुम्हें अभी दिखाया, जो हमारी get, post, delete APIs हैं, so that I have already coded here to save time and show you कि काम कैसे करती है. So this is for our actual project जो DSC का review system अभी बना है and will be up for you guys. उसके लिए है, but I'll show you how to make your own. तो हमने एक new collection बना लिया. In this we can add a request. And यहाँ पे हम हमारा ये वाला सर्वर लेते हैं जो हमने अभी बनाया है, localhost 3000. ठीक है? And we can go to Postman. We can type this. ठीक है? अब मैं तुम्हें इसके पहले एक और अच्छी चीज़ बताऊंगा that is used, कि जैसे तुम देखोगे अभी, let me show you an example. जैसे मेरे पे ये कोई भी राउट्स है नहीं है, and मैं यहाँ से बाहर आ रहा हूँ. You can come out of the running Node.js application by pressing Ctrl+C and you can come back to the terminal. उसके बाद जैसे अभी हमारा ये सब मैंने कमेंट कर दिया, ये हमारे पास एक राउट है अभी गेट करके. तो when I run node app.js, I'll show you with only one route. ये हमारी राउट है एंड हम जैसे ही इसमें सेंड दबाते हैं, दिस इज व्हाट वी गेट बैक, हेलो वर्ल्ड. और ये सिमिलर टू व्हाट वी गॉट बैक इन द ब्राउजर, जो हेलो वर्ल्ड में दिखा था, सेम थिंग विल गेट बैक हियर. और इसमें देखो यहाँ मैंने ऑलरेडी लिखा हुआ है res.send hello world, इसलिए तुम्हारे पास वो लिखा आ रहा है हेलो वर्ल्ड. अगर मैं इसे चेंज करता हूँ, I'll write कि you have hit the get route, है ना, and save it. अब मैं सेव करूँगा तो ये ऑलरेडी मेरे बैकएंड में डेटा वापस रन नहीं हुआ है, बिकॉज इट इज़ ऑलरेडी रनिंग फ्रॉम द वॉट एवर द प्रीवियस वर्जन वॉज. ये जो भी चेंजेस है ये अभी रिफ्लेक्ट होंगे नहीं. सो विच इज़ वाई यू विल हैव टू क्लोज इट एंड देन ओपन इट अगेन. अब अगर मैं चेंज करके इसमें देखूंगा तो यू विल सी कि इसमें लिखा है यू हैव हिट द गेट राउट. अगर मैंने यहाँ पे कुछ भी चेंज किया, जैसे हिट हटा दिया होता तो सेव करता और बंद नहीं करता, तो सेंड करता तो सेम ही चीज़ आ रही होती, हिट अभी भी आ रहा है ना. तो इसके अंदर एक अच्छा फीचर है दैट इज कॉल्ड नोडमॉन. तो व्हाट एसेंशियली नोडमॉन इज कि तुम्हें बार बार अपना सर्वर मैनुअली रिस्टार्ट करने के बदले इट डज इट फॉर यू. इससे क्या होता है, व्हेनेवर यू चेंज समथिंग, सम कोड इन योर सर्वर साइड, ये खुद रिफ्रेश कर देगा, एंड विच इज़ लाइक अ गुड थिंग फॉर अस डेवलपर्स. हमारा काम ईजियर कर रहा है. तो एसेंशली ये पैकेज इंस्टॉल करने के सारे डिटेल्स हमें बताए गए हैं, यूसेज क्या है, इंस्टॉलेशन क्या है. ओके, सो आई विल नॉट गो इनटू इट अभी, आई ऑलरेडी हैव इट इंस्टॉल्ड. तुम कर सकते हो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन पढ़ के. तो आई विल गो विद दैट node1 app.js एंड यू कैन सी कि थोड़ा येलो कलर लाइन में जो भी कोड आता है, दिस इज नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट टू रीड, बट बेसिकली अब अगर मैं यहाँ हैव हिट लिखूँ एंड सेव करूँ, तो यू कैन सी ये कैसे ऑलरेडी तुम्हारे लिए सर्वर रीस्टार्ट कर दे रहा है. तो अब जैसे मैंने यहाँ पे गेट राउट बनाई है, I'll take these routes, ठीक है। मैं यहाँ पे अपनी बस पोस्ट राउट का एग्जांपल दिखाऊंगा तुम्हें। यहाँ पोस्ट लिख देता हूँ और सेव कर देता हूँ। एंड नाउ हाउ डू यू यूज पोस्टमैन, है ना। गेट राउट तो हमारी चल रही है एकदम बढ़िया। अब पोस्ट आउट कैसे चेक करोगे, तो एक और बना लेते हैं। इसमें यू हैव, देखो इतने टाइप के फंक्शंस होते हैं। वी ओनली डिस्कस द टॉप 4 लाइक गेट, पोस्ट, पुट और डिलीट डिस्कस किए थे। सो आई विल शो यू पोस्ट। पोस्ट में भी हम सेम राउट लेंगे क्योंकि नाम सेम है, बस एंड पॉइंट डिफरेंट है। एंड यू कैन सी दैट इट्स रिटन यू हैव हिट द पोस्ट राउट, ठीक है। मुझे रीस्टार्ट भी नहीं करना पड़ा सर्वर, इट डिड इट फॉर मी। एंड मेरी राउट्स काम कर रही है। सो इसका मतलब है कि मेरा बैकएंड अब अप हो चुका है ना। इट इज़ रनिंग समवेयर एंड राउट्स आर बीइंग हिटिंग, मतलब डेटा मेरे पे आ रहा है। अब बस इतना ही काम है कि डेटा को स्टोर करना है इन अ डेटाबेस एंड सेंड इट बैक टू द फ्रंट एंड रिएक्ट में, जैसे अभी यश ने बताया था। सो दिस ऑल आई लीव अप टू यू गाइज टू रिसर्च, क्योंकि बैकएंड एक दिन में कवर करने जैसा टॉपिक है नहीं। यू आर गोइंग टू हैव टू रिसर्च ऑन हाउ टू डू एवरीथिंग, बट दिस इज एसेंशली व्हाट डू यू से, एक मैंने तुम्हें स्केलेटन बता दिया कि कैसे काम होता है। एंड दिस इज व्हाट यू आर गोना बी डूइंग। सो I'll just go to GitHub एंड शो यू कि हमने जो अभी वो बनाया है ना, हमारा प्रोजेक्ट बनाया है, उसका बैकएंड कैसा दिखता है। तो ये हमारा बैकएंड है। इसको अगर मैं VS कोड में खोल लूँ, यस। तो इसके अंदर भी app.js फाइल है। इसके अंदर भी हमने एक्सप्रेस रिक्वायर किया है। यहाँ भी ऐप यूज़ हो रहा है। एंड यहाँ जहाँ हमने राउट्स डिफाइन की हुई है, ये रही हमारी गेट राउट, ये हमारी पोस्ट राउट है, और ये हमारी डिलीट राउट है, ठीक है। तो तुम्हें दिख रहा है कि जैसे अभी मैंने तुम्हें बेसिक बताया, अंदर का डेटा रहने दो, बट बाहर का इज प्रिटी मच द सेम थिंग। राउट्स बनानी होती है हमें बैकएंड के अंदर, और यहाँ पे हमने लिसन भी करवाया है, ठीक है। तो इसके अंदर तो काफ़ी डेटा है। दिस विल, इफ अगर ये कवर करते रह गया तो पूरा दिन निकल जाएगा। सो दिस इज बेसिकली आई गिव यू एन आइडिया कि बैकएंड काम कैसे करता है, एंड व्हाट ऑल टूल्स यू नीड। जैसे npm चाहिए होती है, ये सारे पैकेजेस हैं। एंड we only discussed one, express, and that is basically the essential package to make all these routes, है ना। तो अब तुम्हें पता है how to get started. This was not a full backend guide. This was only to get you guys started into what is actually backend, है ना। So we'll end it there for now from my side, and I will hand over. First of all, thank you for listening. काफी, I know this must be a lot for you guys, and if you got like understood even 50% of it या फिर 10% of it, मेरा job हो गया है। I have given you a basic about the backend, and now it is up to you कि backend की research करो, look at all the resources, सीखो, and then implement it into a project, ठीक है। So if you are planning to make a full stack project, अगर तुम्हारे पास already projects है तो well and good, but Yash and I have already given you so much on front end and back end कि you can now start researching and making your project अगर तुमने अभी तक कोई बनाया नहीं। So with that, thank you, and I would like to hand it over to Raghav. Yash, please take over.
Yash, तुम करोगे
Yeah.
integration?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. First of all, thanks a lot, Darshan. That was an amazing session, and
Great
I
session,
hope
Darshan.
yeah, the viewers would have absorbed most of it. So like Darshan have talked about backend and API and routes and endpoints and the difference between them, and why do we need backend. Everything has been talked about. So the last thing that remains is integrating the backend and the front end. So that is done through APIs, as Darshan told you, and a postman is a tool through which we can test APIs. So let us have a quick look again on postman and APIs. So for example, if we considered the same project, then let us go to postman. and we see the collection of APIs that Darshan has made, which would cater the backend needs and the front end needs also. So first of all, what are the operations? Let us, again revisit that. These are called CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. We create some data, we read it from the backend using the database, and then we update some data, some pre-existing data, and then we delete some data. So these are the 4 basic operations. So let us identify what are the CRUD operations we want for our use case. All right. So there is a feedback portal. You want to post some feedbacks, right? So you want to create feedbacks. So create is being executed. So you will do a get request. Post request. I'm sorry. So post requests are for creating data. So post request is for creating a feedback. Now you want to get the list of all the feedbacks that have been posted on the portal and display it. So that is reading the data from the database. So you will do a get request for that. Get requests are for reading. So we do post request and get request. Then we also added a functionality for deleting data, for deleting your feedback using the passphrase. So delete, it is very obvious that delete is for delete. So deleting data is also one thing. What we have not included yet is updating data, updating your feedback based on the passphrase. So what we thought of was that we would tell you how to create, read, and delete data, and then give you a task that maybe you can contribute to the repository, and maybe add functionality for updating the data. So that would also help you practice your skills and also improve the project in its own. So that was one thing. So let us jump on to the needs, the CRUD operations that are being performed in our project. First, we get the list of the feedbacks. Then we post a feedback, so a post request, and then we delete a feedback.
Yash, are you sharing a screen?
Oh yeah, sorry, right. I think I have skipped that part. Just a second. All right. Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the screen that was being shared. So these are the CRUD operations, and then this slide, the get, post, and delete operations that we have to achieve in our project. So let us jump on to Postman. All right. So in the Postman, we see our collection, and we have the same request: the get, the post, and the delete requests. Now it has been written at the backend, right? You are doing some computation, you are retrieving data from the database and then sending it as a response to the user. Now how do we retrieve that on the client side? What type of code do we write so that we get the response from the API? So Postman is very clever. It provides us with everything. If you are lazy, it is for you. You just need to click on this option, code. You need to select where you are writing that. For example, Node.js also it provides, and unfortunately it doesn't provide one for JSX or Axios right now, I should say, but JavaScript fetch. There is a fetch function in JavaScript which is used to make API requests. All right. So this is a function. So as soon as you select that and you select your request, it shows you the exact code you need to write. So what do you need to do is, copy this and paste this in your code where you want to retrieve. So if we see in our code, there is a component, feedback list. So here we need the response for the feedback items. We need a list, and then using that list, we map that array of feedbacks and render the feedback item component. That is the thing happening here. So we retrieve that in the feedback list component. So this is a code I wrote for that, or Mahima, one of our fellow members at DSC, wrote this code. So here it is something different from what we see in Postman. So what Postman gives us is it gives us the code using the fetch function of JavaScript. Okay, it is inbuilt in JavaScript, so you can use that. Whereas, as we talked about NPM packages, there are more clever tools for handling APIs as well. So Axios is one of that package, Axios. So if you go to npm and search Axios there, so it will lead you to the page, and all you have to do is put the command npm i axios in your client folder. So it would install Axios, and then you can import it as you need to require it in Node.js. Here the import statement is very analogous to that, and then you start using it. So this is the name of the instance you have given to it, and then you call it. So what type of request is it? Get request. So we use axios.get, and what we provide in it, the URL, the route at which the request has to be made. So we get that from here. So in the postman, we can check, here we have the route, so we can copy that and simply paste that in our code. And this is this keyword await and async, it is under the asynchronous calls, so that is a separate topic in itself. It would have been a very lengthy workshop, otherwise it is already a lengthy workshop, so we have skipped that for now. But surely read about synchronous and asynchronous JavaScript and React. So here it is an asynchronous call. So we store the response we get from this get request into this res named variable, and we check if it is not empty, then we insert its value into a feedbacks item. The use state and use effect hooks are also beyond the scope of this workshop because it has already been very lengthy, but these are the very important things you need to know when you start building React projects. These are the things you would use in almost every React project. So these are the very basic functions that you need to maintain states and to deal with data in your React project. So just understand for now that we are getting this data, and actually it is in the res.data field. Okay, so it is a response and it has many metadata related to it, which Axios provides us. So inside the data key holds the value for the actual data we have received from the backend. So we store that into our array, and we have reversed it because we want that the latest feedbacks are shown at the topmost. So here it is storing the reverse of the data we are getting into the feedbacks array, and then what we do, we just map it and render each time a new feedback item, providing the current object which contains the current message, the current name, and the social media URLs of the author. And then we provide a key, because when we are using map functions and we are rendering objects using map, then it is important to provide a key so that each element can be distinguished. Otherwise it won't be distinguished by the DOM. So key has to be provided, and then there is additional attributes or props, you can say. So that was based on our needs. So this is the very basic thing. And now this is the get request. So instead of fetch, we have used Axios. That's it. Otherwise, you can also copy the same code, and you will get the result in this format. And instead of .text, you can use .json. So it will give you in a JavaScript object manner. So that is how you handle API requests at the client side. Similarly, post. So when we click on post, and we check the code, we see there is something we need to pass in the body. All right. So this is the information we get from the form when we open it. So suppose I'm opening the form on the website. So every information we enter here, we get that, and then we send it to the backend using the post request. So in the code, we see where we have defined the form, add review form. There are a lot of inputs. All right, like we saw, and we are getting their data from here on change. This is yet another thing out of the scope of this workshop. and you should explore that on your own for now. But in case you want that we have a separate session on this and go deep into React and its use cases and do projects, then let us know. We'll hold more workshops on it. And then what we do, we get the data, then on click of the submit button, we we make a post request, right? We are creating data, so we need to do post request. Where do we post? The route for this is provided in the Postman documentation. So it is the same route, but it is a different endpoint because we need to create data. So it is a post request. So the route is same, but now when we made the get request, we didn't provide the second parameter, but now we are providing the second parameter because it contains the data that we need to deliver to the backend. So the form data variable contains all the data, and now we are providing that. And when we get a response from this API request and the status for that response is 200, that is the request has been made successfully, we set a message, and the message 1 corresponds to feedback successfully submitted, and it would be displayed at the bottom of the form. So you can try that while posting your feedbacks on the portal. You can observe a green message. So that is how the post request is working. And similarly for delete request, we have made it work in the similar way, and that is how API requests are handled. So we'll not go very deep into it in the code. We'll like you to explore a bit and get familiar with the fundamentals, and then get onto projects which include handling APIs. And we can also share the code for some projects, some basic projects, and the resources would also be shared with you guys. So I would share this page with you, and you can access that, and all the resources are at the end, so you can have a look at them. Where to start with React, and what is a library, what is a framework, everything that has been discussed in this workshop is here, so you can go through that. And that's it on integration with the APIs. Now I'd like Raghav to continue on deployment a bit. So Raghav.
Yeah, one second. So Arman, you were asking if 200 is the length of the response. So 200 is actually a status code that says that it's a successful, transaction in the API. So now I know we have taken a long time. We started off with front end, building the basics of the website, and now we are basically we built a backend later on in using Node. And so right now these two people, Yash and Darshan, have done a great job of actually making the backend, the API, and the front end, which is the client. But it's still running on their own laptops right now, right? It's not accessible to the entire world. So today I'm going to just take a small amount of time where I'm going to actually show you how we plan to deploy their services. So I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah. It is.
So let us first see what we have made till now. All right. So currently we have a database, and as Darshan told, it was a MongoDB database. Then we have a backend, which is a Node.js Express server that he's running. And then we have a front end, which is running on React.js. So let us attack each and every component step by step. So our basic aim is to make these services available globally in the public domain, right? Like, for example, like a normal user would actually now be going to google.com. They go to a normal website, google.com, and it's available to all the people around the world, right? So we want to do this. We want to make their feedback site available to everyone in the world. So how do we go about that? So the first thing that we'll do is tackle the front end. So there are a lot of front-end deployment options that are available. So there's GitHub pages, there's Cloudflare pages, there's Netlify, and then there's this containerized and deployed on a VM or a cloud infrastructure like AWS Beanstalk. Now, This last part is something where your deployment process actually gets a bit involved. It will be involving some knowledge about containerizing of these web servers, some knowledge about actual how like the networking works around an operating system, and a little bit. If you're deploying it on cloud, then you'll have to know the different tools that AWS, GCP, etc. provide. So I'm not going to go that much into this. So these are the three options: GitHub Pages, Cloudflare Pages, and Netlify. These three kind of deployment procedures that you can use currently, and they're free for every one of you. GitHub Pages is built into GitHub, so it has a very simple process of deploying. But in our case, we'll be using Cloudflare Pages. Now, the big question is, why are we using Cloudflare Pages, right? So currently, DSC, the domain that we have, dsctit.tech, the DNS provider of that particular domain is currently running on Cloudflare. All right. Second, it's a very easy to set up process. I'll actually just show it to you. It's very simple. They also have some CI/CD pipelines that help not getting that much involved. So as a front-end engineer, you do not really want to focus much on how the website is deployed. You want a lot of this stuff to be automated for you. So the moment Yash pushes his front-end code to GitHub, he doesn't want to go ahead, pull it into a separate deployment server, and then make it run again. All of this should be automated. So Cloudflare provides those pipelines to you out of the box. So these are called the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines. In fact, you can actually run a few tests. So supposing if Yash is working with a big front-end team, to make sure that no one sends out some malicious code or some very bad code, he can actually start putting some tests in those pipelines to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And Cloudflare in itself, like, it's a very famous company that has been deeply involved into the web technologies. They have been hosting a lot of websites, production level websites. They also have a lot of protections built in, so like DDoS protections, and they have been working very hard on those technologies. So that's actually the reason why we'll be using Cloudflare. So if you look at, wait a second, yeah. So if you look at this Cloudflare, so this is actually Cloudflare. This is our dashboard for DSC. So over here, as can you see my screen, Safari?
No.
Okay, you can't see that. But one second. Now you can see Safari.
Yeah.
So currently, as you can see, DSC has a few projects deployed from GitHub. So we have this Bootcamp feedback client, which has been basically, it's using the code in our GitHub account. We then have our official website, which is also deployed over here. We have our Bootcamp badge, which we'll be providing in a few seconds. We had the hackathon digital village, so that also has been deployed. So we have deployed a lot of our front-end websites on Cloudflare only. So so this is how Cloudflare really looks like. You can create a project, connect it to your GitHub account, and then simply deploy it. If you look at our GitHub, developer and repositories, so you can actually see that every branch has been deployed on Cloudflare Pages. So like there's another branch with Axios. So this actually had a failed build. Actually, no. So this actually passed as a simple security check. So this has also been deployed on Cloudflare Pages. So like this, you can have a very collaborative system where, supposing if you're testing a new feature, instead of attacking the main production website, in a separate feature branch, you can deploy it and check it if the features are working fine. So this is one way of deploying your front end, and a lot of this is simple to deploy. You can simply use UI, and I'm not going to go into the step-by-step process of how to do it. For that, just Google around, right? Just simply Google deploying React-based applications on Cloudflare Pages. If you want to use GitHub Pages, Google that. So that I leave up to you. So that is for the front end part. Now let's go to the backend. So backend in itself has a little more, things that we have to think about. because in the case of backend, there's a lot of data that you want persistent. For example, like in their particular website, they want the data to be persistent. So like the moment you do a post request, it should be there for some time. So you need a database, right? And so a few services are there which allow you to deploy backend code. So there's Vercel, there's Heroku, and then there's the same thing that we use that I told about React. You can containerize it, deploy it on a VM or on a cloud. We deployed it on a VM. So Heroku is I would suggest if you want to try out a free service, try out Heroku, because while it is difficult to use many at times, it is a really good platform. The only few problems with such kind of platforms is like, supposing if your website has not been used for some amount of time, they actually put your website to sleep. So the next time you try to open that website, it takes a longer period of time. So that's the reason why we do not prefer, at least at DSC, we do not prefer to use these services. Rather, we plan to self-host our own websites. So we currently are using these tools for deploying it on a container, right? So we are using Docker to containerize it. We're using nginx to basically, it's basically a load balancer that we're using on our VM, right? And we use Ansible for automation. So basically the thing is that when Darshan pushes his code to GitHub, I want GitHub to first test out his code, build the Docker images, and then SSH into my, or remotely log into my VM, and then deploy it there. So we use Ansible and GitHub Actions to build that CI/CD pipeline and automate that procedure. And in the end, we use Linux because, well, the entire VM is running on Linux. So this is a simple flowchart. Darshan pushes the code, the CI/CD pipeline that GitHub Actions manages for us. Then there's going to be a remote login, which is going to be managed by Ansible. Then there'll be a pull of updates, and then it will deploy it onto the VM. So if you actually look at Darshan's code right now, right? Many of you actually did see when Darshan showed it to you. The one thing you might have noticed was that he told you about app.js, but there are just too many files over here, right? You're seeing Ansible host, you're seeing Ansible.gpg, Ansible.cfg, playbooks. So what is going on over here? So I'm not going to go into deep detail, but I'm going to just show you what's going around over here. So playbooks is essentially what Ansible, we're going to be using Ansible to remotely log into our servers. So this is a redeploy.yml file. So all it does is it says that, okay, my hosts, which is my VM, is the production host. The tasks that you have to do is basically to pull the GitHub repository and then redeploy it. And then I have run some shell commands. So what it does, it goes into the folder. It does a git pull. Then it turns off the previous containered version, and then it redeploys it again. Right? This is a simple workflow. So that's what our Ansible thing is going on. And for that, we have defined our hosts. So for example, as you can see, our production hosts are using this domain, this user, and they have their own private key. Right? So that's Ansible for you, right? I know I'm glossed over a lot of the things, but I'm just trying to show you what goes on around in the deployment world. Now, for automating this entire thing, we have to use GitHub Actions. So the moment Darshan pushes his code onto the GitHub repository, GitHub Actions should call itself up and say, okay, fine, there's a new code base. I have to first test it out, build a Docker image of it, then use Ansible, remote login, and then redeploy it. So if you look at our workflows, if you look at main.yml, so that is actually what we are doing, right? So there were a few tests, and I'm not going to go over there. So the first thing it does is it gets the code. So in GitHub Actions, what it does is it creates a small VM, all right, a small test VM where it can actually do the things you want to do. So what it does is it gets my code from the repository. Then there's this access key for our VM, which it decrypts. Then what it does is it installs Python into that, makeshift runner. Then it installs Ansible in it. Then it uses Ansible to run that redeploy YML file. All right. And if you actually see our workflow, right? So GitHub Actions is really good, right? They actually show you what jobs you have. So if I go into the deploy job, it actually shows me that this is what happened. It first ran a test, then it ran deploy code. And then I can go deeper and see what exactly it did. So first it checked out all of my code. So as you can see, run actions, check out version 3. It basically just got all of the code from my GitHub repository. Then it decrypted that access token to get into my VM. It then set up the Python, things and installed the Ansible libraries. Right. So this is basically installing Ansible. Then the deploy process happened. So then it ran my Ansible playbook, it SSH into my server, pulled it and redeployed. Right. And then that's about it. So this is our CI/CD pipeline that we built. So I know nothing you would have understood in this entire thing, right? I mean, you could have gotten a small few concepts. So this pushes you into the field of DevOps, right? And it's a very vast field in itself. It's basically DevOps is not a technology, it's a philosophy of how you maintain code and deploy over a period of time. So I think that's where I'll wrap it up. So tomorrow, actually, Jaskirat Singh Randhawa, who is actually the ex-lead of GDSC, will be coming over to basically give a brief description about DevOps. And he is also planning to start a DevOps program. So that will be the first introduction of DevOps. And from here on out, we will then try to create more workshops on the field of DevOps. And I will be actually working alongside with him to host this program. And I hope you guys attend tomorrow's session. It will be fun. And I would actually like to thank Darshan and Yash once again for, how do I end the stream? Stop. Yeah, so I would like to thank Darshan and Yash for such an amazing session. I think it was a very long session, I would say, around 3 hours. But I think we achieved what we wanted to achieve. So yeah, I think if there are no more questions, I think we can end it. Any few words you have to say, Yash and Darshan?
Yeah, thank you so much, Raghav, for enlightening the audience on the topic of deployment and how you showcase your work to the globe and not just put it on your computer, right? And I hope the audience would be encouraged to pick up DevOps too and explore the field. And it was a lovely explanation. And also thanks to Mahima, our DSC peer, who really helped a lot in preparing the content and also building the portal too. Unfortunately, she couldn't come to the workshop because she was occupied, but she also helped a lot in the conduct and preparing the portal for this workshop.
Yeah, actually, Arman, yeah, I get it. You did not understand much of the deployment. Don't worry. I just wanted to show that there's a small section in the entire web development flow, which is the deployment part. And I know I can't explain this entire thing in such a short period of time. So tomorrow, do attend the session. That will be an introduction to that field that I'm talking about. So yeah. Darshan, any few words?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all of you who are here. First of all, for attending such a long session.
Yeah.
It's okay. How much ever you learned is, I think, a step forward, okay, into the field of web development. So if I think we taught you a little bit and encouraged you to see more in web development, then I think our goal is achieved. And
Yeah.
I hope you can leave the responses about the workshop. We'll be sharing the link with you of the project we made. And I hope that will, I think, motivate you to make your own projects. That's all.
Yeah, I've shared the link for the feedback form so you guys can fill it. So this is the entire, whatever we showed you right now, right? It basically then goes down to this one URL that you'll be able to see. So do fill in the feedback. We would, at DSC, we actually want to keep that feedback loop open. We want to really understand how do we make better workshops and make it more exciting for you guys. The main aim for this bootcamp and for all the bootcamps that we're coming over, that we're going to be showing in the remaining week, is to basically expose you to the different fields of tech, and sort of get you bootstrapped into those and kind of get you interested in that. So we're just lighting the spark. Now I think it's your job to actually fan the flame and go ahead. So yeah, and those who attended, who are still here, if they want to get a badge, they can get the bootcamp badge as well. I'm sharing the link to that as well. Yeah. Sorry. Cool. I think we can end the session now. Actually, अब informal कर दो, जिसको बातें करनी कर लो, कैमरा और खोल लो.
किसी को कोई डाउट्स हैं या कुछ जनरल डिस्कशन करना है?
सब सो गए क्या?
सब छोड़ गए.
एक्चुअली डेवऑप्स वाले ने एक्चुअली कराना ही नहीं चाहिए था. लग रहा है टाइम छोटा है, उसमें इतना होने नहीं वाला.
अरे नहीं, ठीक है यार, मतलब those who are interested they have stayed and मतलब anyway this would be on YouTube I guess. So
जो छोड़ गए वो
हाँ YouTube पे भी.
क्या दर्शन?
जो छोड़ गए हैं
हाँ
वो लोग वहां से देख लेंगे YouTube से. हो गए, थक गए होंगे थोड़ा देख के.